this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please join me in honoring America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Again, good evening. Would the Assistant City Clerk please call the roll?
Councillor Elliott?
Here.
Councillor Martin? Here. Councillor Mendonça?
Here.
Councillor Mercia?
Here.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Here.
Councillor Murphy?
Here.
Councillor Broderick?
Here.
Councillor Caulfield?
Here.
Councillor Dakota?
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm requesting a moment of silence with darkened chambers for Raymond F. Costello, a loving and devoted husband, father, grandfather, and friend. Mr. Costello had a distinguished career as a Lowell police officer, serving on the Lowell Police Department Vice Squad and Criminal Bureau, and was well known and respected throughout the city. He is survived by 4 children, a daughter Rhonda, 3 sons, Richard, Randy, and Raymond Costello, who is employed by the City of Lowell in the Inspectional Services Department. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. Would my colleagues mind if I offered a moment of silence from the chair? Thank you. Members of the Lowell Health Department asked me to offer Rosemary Rosie Carr, a longtime resident of the City of Lowell, who passed away on September 9th. She actually was a volunteer at the Lowell Health Department for a number of years. She was also an active member of the East End Club Ladies Auxiliary and was a member of the Dumpolsky Club. She was a sister of Richard Barry, who passed away, and I know that Councilor Caulfield offered a moment of silence for Mr. Barry, who died August 10th, and also Trudy Miller, who died on September 4th. So on behalf of the Lowell Health Department, I'd like to offer Rosie Carr's name for a moment of silence in darkened chambers as well. Thank you. May we all rise, please. Thank you. May they rest in peace. I'm going to ask my colleagues to offer a motion to postpone the minutes of the September 13th meeting for acceptance by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Murphy. All those in favor of postponing the minutes until we receive them next week indicate by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. We also have a communication from the city auditor, formalized cash policy of the City of Lowell under initial business. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Mercia.
I wanted to accept that communication and place it on file.
Motion by Councilor Mercia, accept the communication, placed on file, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Mercia.
It kind of was brought by from a motion by Councilor Elliott as well as myself as to the cash policy that's in place in the different departments, and it was quite lengthy and quite efficient. But I'm concerned about a particular, I just have one quick question about, it says, and I can't point you to the page because there's no page number on this one, but it says outstanding checks are examined for those that are outstanding for a considerable amount of time. However, it was noted by the treasurer that there are many outstanding checks that are in tailings. So if, through you to Tom Moses, if you could explain, that doesn't mean they're bounced, they've bounced. What does that mean?
No, those are checks that the city has written to employees or vendors that have gone uncashed for a considerable length of time. There's a process that we go through to try and notify the recipients of those checks to find out, if they've misplaced it or, find out what happened. In the meantime, we can isolate those in a separate place in our financial statements called tailings. And that's why it's called tailings. It's a place that we put those old checks in.
Because we don't have many people that come in here to pay a like a tax bill or water bill by check and they bounce or anything? Do we have a lot of
We
those?
get lots of them.
And what are we doing about it? What do we do about that?
We reverse the account, and the next bill that goes out shows the unpaid balance.
Do we have a special person in place that goes after these?
Everybody does.
Everybody takes a role in
Everybody in the
this?
treasurer's office, yes.
Are we saying that we have checks that aren't, we're not assuming yet because we're short of help in the treasurer's office?
No, that cash policy, it doesn't address bounce checks.
And what about checks that are we receiving but we're not processing on time?
We should be processing everything on time. If we get backed up more than a couple of days, I've instructed the Treasurer's Department to bundle up those checks and send them to the lockbox for processing, so it can be done by machine rather than by hand.
Because I would hate to think that because we were short of help, which I don't know if we are, that we're negligent in doing this in an expeditious way so that they become not valid anymore. So
No.
that's not happening.
No.
If I may, and just echoing what Mr. Moses said, because this has been from time to time, we monitor what goes on in the treasurer's office. We monitor almost every office in the city, and we do have strict instructions that if it gets over a couple days' worth of checks, we send them right to the bank that handles our lockbox for us, and they process those for us. So it's done in an expeditious way.
Okay, that's good. And this was quite well received by Cheryl Wright, who did a lot of work here, bringing this explanation. That was, and, Tom as well?
Actually,
I'm
Dave.
sorry.
Actually, Dave McGurl, and I do want to say that what you have in your hand is the 7th version of that. So it's gone through quite a bit of review.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Councilman Donza on the motion, then Council Elliott.
Well, I agree with Council Mercer that they should add page numbers to the document so that I could refer you to what is the 4th page in, counting the cover. It has in the center school lunch and school athletic receipts, has policies, procedures, then it has parking garage receipts, policies and procedures. The second bullet under there is a cut and paste of the one from the school, and it's clearly that. So I suggest it be reviewed one more time because there are things that need to be corrected. I think reading this, you think it was a draft. Yeah, I think it's clearly a mistake. If it's not, something needs to be corrected.
Thank you, Councilman Donza. Council Elliott.
Thank you. I'd like to, I have a number of questions as well on this report. I'd like to motion that it referred to the Finance Subcommittee. The auditor is not here tonight, so it might be a better
Council
idea.
Elliott moves in substitution to refer the report to the Finance Subcommittee, seconded by Councilman Donza. Any further discussion? All those in favor of referring to the report regarding the formalized cash policy of the City of Lowell to the Finance Subcommittee, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Any other questions, Council Elliott?
Well, I don't know if it's, it's along these lines. We just got a report delivered by Mr. Moses just before the meeting in the management letter for FY 2010, and it does cite
I was
some.
actually going to take that up under suspension when we get to communications, if
Okay.
that's okay.
Yep, thank you.
It's not before us, but thank you. Moving on now to unfinished business. The first is a in-city council vote accepting Section 21, 22, 23 as provided in Section 21A of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32B as amended. We need a motion by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Dakota, to table any action on this vote until December 13th.
Yes, so moved.
So moved, seconded by Councilor Dakota. Roll call, please.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Donza?
No.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
8 yeas, 1 nay.
Eight yeas, 1 nay. Motion carries. Next item, in-city council vote to rescind the appointment of Angela Giccia for the position of acting city clerk, whereas on September 13th, Angela Giccia was appointed acting city clerk commencing September 26, 2011. And whereas on September 19, 2011, Ms. Gitche declined the appointment of acting city clerk, now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the City Council of the City of Lowell hereby rescinds the vote of September 13, 2011 of the appointment of Angela Gitche for the position of acting city clerk. If there's no objection, second reading by title. In City Council vote to rescind the appointment of Angela Gitche for the position of acting city clerk. Council Mercia?
No, so moved.
So moved. A motion by Council Mercia, second by Council Caulfield. Any discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next item, in City Council vote to accept and approve the appointment of Robert E. Slagle for the position of acting city clerk. Now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the City Council of the City of Lowell accepts and approves the appointment of Robert E. Slagle for the position of acting city clerk until such time as a successor city clerk is appointed. No objection, second reading by title. In City Council vote to accept and approve the appointment of Robert E. Slagle for the position of acting city clerk. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm certainly going to support this. I just want to know, when will the council meet to conduct interviews of potential clerks that might...
We have posted the position in a number of newspapers and periodicals, as you know, Council. I believe the deadline is October 21st, but I'll confirm that. And once we get the resumes distributed, we'll begin the process. So I would say probably the third week in October, to answer your question.
That's when we're going to start the interviews?
Correct, yes.
And when you think the council would take a vote on that?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's a process that we're going to go through. If we wanted to try to tighten it up, we can certainly meet. If we have, say we have 6 candidates we want to interview, we can probably get those done in 2 nights. If we have 9 candidates, we might need 2 nights and a Saturday. It really depends upon the short list that we bring forward.
Okay. I just want to thank Attorney Slagle for coming forward.
Thank you. He's actually here with us this evening, so I want to also appreciate him being here this evening. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you.
Uh,
Councilman Mendonça.
Regarding this appointment, will we have yet another set of eyes in the office and maybe get another kind of report to the council as to what is observed?
I would say yes, Counselor, but we do have a couple of motions on the agenda tonight to deal with setting up an ad hoc committee of the City Council, and we'll probably, depending upon the disposition of those motions, but to answer your question, we will be getting additional reports out of the City Clerk's office on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the executive session. I am going to ask that we move to go into executive session at the end of our regular meeting and adjourn from executive session by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Roll call on going into executive session for the purpose of ongoing discussions of matters relating to a former city employee as it relates to charges against this former city employee. And we will then adjourn from executive session. Roll call.
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Going to the city manager's portion of the agenda, I would like a suspension of the rules, if we could, by Councilor Dakota, seconded by Councilor Broderick, to take up communications from council motions, as well as the report that Councilor Elliott brought up earlier this evening, since it was not on the agenda, and those communications inadvertently got left off the agenda. And I promise you going forward that that will be on. I understand we're getting close to public hearing time. If you'd rather wait until after the public hearing to discuss this, entirely up to you. It's just, I have 2 minutes before 7. So we need a motion to suspend it for
Motion
Councilor
to
Martin.
suspend.
Let's take them up now.
By Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Elliott, to suspend the rules to deal with the communications and responses to council motion, which we do have a summary in our packet, plus we have specific answers. And as Councilor Elliott mentioned, we did just receive the FY 2010 management letter from the administration, and I guess I will recognize Councilor Elliott at this point because he had brought that up earlier.
I was just going to have it referred to the Finance Subcommittee to coincide with the cash management response that we just referred to the Finance Subcommittee. I know at a prior meeting I had also, and I know that the auditor is not here, but I had also asked for duplicates or another copy of prior year management letters. So can we have that sent to us in the next packet? I did look. I looked again, and I just can't seem to find it. Just to see prior year findings and how they've been addressed. So, and I just had one other question germane to this, Mr. Mayor. What is the status? This is for fiscal year 2010. Where are we with fiscal year 2011 or the prior fiscal year?
The audit is, Mr. Moses is more on top of this than I am, but the auditors are in the city hall now completing the FY11 audit.
Okay.
And we anticipate that, the audit will be done, and it's still our goal, even though the Department of Revenue did lift that requirement from the city that was put in place back in 2006.
Right.
They did lift that last year. We're still working on the strategy of getting the audit to the Department of Revenue with our filing of the recap sheet, and then the management letter is produced for us, and then we go through a process with the auditors of reviewing the management letter, providing them with a management response that's it's the best practice, identified best practice in terms of working through any of the issues that are noted in the management letter.
Right. Could we get a copy of that draft letter too? The draft management letter?
It's not, we haven't received it yet.
Not for FY11, for FY10.
We likely won't even receive that draft letter till the spring.
For FY10.
For FY10, you have FY10 in front of you.
Right, the draft letter before it. I'm a little concerned, this is a year and a half old. I'm wondering why we're not getting it. But where is the draft letter for FY10 audit?
Well, that's the final. The draft letter is not, it's not a document.
It is a document. We've received them in the past, Mr. Moses. The draft letters come because they make notations to the auditor, and they look for items that they could
All the
conceivably
notations
correct.
are in there.
Okay, well, in the past, we used to look at the draft letter just to see where they were. No? Okay, I'll dig them out. There's always a draft letter that goes out first, so communities have an opportunity to respond. Well, this is the auditor's purview anyway, so
Yeah.
I'll take it up with the auditor at the Finance Subcommittee.
If I
Thank you,
may,
Mayor.
for information purposes, what happens is the auditor puts a management letter together with their findings, and then gives it to management. Management discusses it with the auditor, the audit firm. Typically, that happens in our case, the November, December, January timeframe that we receive the management letter. Then the meetings are held. The management responses are put in. They incorporate the management responses. We don't put it in. They put it in, but based upon what we give them, and then they hand it back to us, which we then turn over to the council. There's nothing really changed on their comments. The only addition is the management response.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We don't have a second yet, but I'm going to recognize Council Broderick because you have your hand up.
Thank you,
This is
Mr.
just to
Mayor.
refer it to the Finance Subcommittee, but I know past practice has been to refer it to the Personnel Subcommittee, but
I was going to ask if we should refer this. This sounds like it's more of the auditor's role, and we might want to directly deal with the auditor on this. So it might be, I understand we sent the other one to the Finance Subcommittee, but we might want to refer this to what used to be the auditor oversight, auditor clerk oversight is now the Personnel Subcommittee.
Councilor Elliott?
I'm not sure what the Personnel Subcommittee role is. I mean, we always had an audit oversight specifically to deal with these things. I think most of these issues are financial issues, and the personnel sounds like it's for personnel issues, reviewing auditors' contract and recommendations. So, I mean, personally, I think it belongs in finance, all relative to financial issues and weaknesses in the city. So, That's my personal opinion.
So I would need a second to the motion to refer to the Finance Subcommittee.
Yes.
Second by Council Mercia. Council Caulfield?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we still had the Audit Oversight Subcommittee, which we had for years, then that would be the proper subcommittee to refer this to, but I think the Finance Subcommittee, why did we ever abolish the Audit Oversights?
I think it was just looking at the tasks that was just a duplication from the Finance Subcommittee and the personnel, so I decided to go with either the personnel and or the finance for issues like this. That was a thought process behind it.
Okay.
Council Broderick?
Again, it doesn't matter to me which subcommittee. My thinking was that in the past, the auditors reviewed this as part of a review, and my understanding was the Personnel Subcommittee was a combination of the Clerk Auditor Oversight and something else, maybe the Personnel, so that's why I made reference to that, but it doesn't matter as long as we review the document and the auditor's available, because I think we need to ask her directly.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor of referring the management letter to the finance?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
I'm
Mayor.
sorry.
I just had
Councilor
one
Garcia.
quick issue about unfinished business, but since we're under suspension, I
No, I
know...
just want to vote on this first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. All those in favor of sending it to the Finance Subcommittee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to vote. Thank you. Council Mercia, while we're on
So I'm still concerned about the Stocklosa School and the HVAC and the whatever's happening over there. I know that they have an independent contractor who came in and did some primary work, went out to order parts, and that was like a month ago. I don't know how long it takes to order parts, but some things still aren't working, and I'm hearing about that. So if we could just check on the independent contractor, because he's a little bit independent when it takes a month to get parts. I don't know it took that long. I don't know what we're dealing with, that we have to go to Indonesia to get a part. I don't know what it is, but if we could just...
Counselor, I'll check on that, and then we'll get word back to you even before the next meeting where we stand with that.
Bring your tools, you might have to do it yourself.
anything else on the communications, responses to motion? Hearing none, motion by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Broderick to accept the communications placed on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. We are now at the general public hearing time. We have 3 public hearings before us this evening. And I think the first person that is registered to speak just actually left the chamber, but let me read the ordinance and open up the public hearing. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the code of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled zoning by amending Section 5.1, Table of Dimensional Regulations, and by inserting a new subsection 5.1.17. Public hearing is now open. All those wishing to speak in favor. Chair recognizes Mr. Bakey.
Just like to begin the public hearing with a overview of the proposed ordinance that is before you, and a little bit of help provide some understanding of what it would attempt to do. Earlier in the summer, as all of you will recall, there was considerable consternation voiced by a number of neighbors in response to a project that was built in one of the city's neighborhoods. And the frustration centered around the fact that the project had been successfully built with minimal public participation. And it included the subdivision of a parcel of land that had previously been a single-family house lot to allow for the construction of an additional home that particular neighborhood did not feel was consistent with the character of the neighborhood around it. And a lot of concern was voiced by many members of the council about whether such a thing should be allowed or not. Ultimately, the reason that project was able to proceed with minimal public participation or even public awareness was the fact that the subdivision of that property occurred using the state's approval not required process, and that's a state law that requires municipal planning boards to approve subdivisions if they meet the minimum frontage required by zoning on an existing street, and they must do so without a public hearing. And what the council asked for in the wake of that discussion are there things that could be done in the city's established residential neighborhoods to minimize the likelihood of something like that project occurring again? And frankly, it doesn't really matter what zoning district that particular project was in, because at different levels of density in different zoning districts, the same opportunity to do a subdivision through the approval not required process exists. So what was brought to the zoning subcommittee over the summer is the proposal that is before you now for public hearing, which would effectively create an opportunity for both a public hearing and design review in many cases where there presently is none, where a project would presently result in a subdivision through that approval not required process with no public involvement and no design controls. This proposal proposes to increase the frontage that is required for a by right development in all of the strictly residential neighborhoods or zoning districts of the city, across all neighborhoods. So this would apply in every area of the city, except it would exempt all of the commercial, industrial, mixed use, and downtown areas where the city tries to promote economic development. But in order to be fair to the development community and create an opportunity for folks to prove that just building another house in a neighborhood through a subdivision isn't necessarily out of character with the neighborhood, and it can be done in a manner that is in character, rather than just increasing the frontage requirement, we have also proposed in this ordinance that there would be a special permit process that would allow you to return essentially to the frontage requirement that exists today, but only after you've held a public hearing and proven to the planning board that the project is consistent with the character of the neighborhood around it, and the neighborhood in question has the opportunity to be notified about the project and respond to it and participate in that public hearing. We've also included language in this ordinance that would require a design review process. In cases where the project is in a historic district, that would be performed by the historic board. In cases where the project is not in a historic district, there would be a written design review comment letter provided by the Department of Planning and Development that the planning board could take under advisement or respond to as they wish as part of that public hearing and special permit granting process. So essentially, it creates an opportunity to allow far more cases to have public involvement than would today. I should stress that the total number of properties in the city that is subject to potential subdivision under the A&R process is probably somewhere between 1% and 2% of the lots in the neighborhoods of the city. This proposal, by increasing the by right frontage, would require that at least half of those would now require some form of public hearing before such a thing could happen. So essentially, this is a way of, in large part, significantly limiting the likelihood that a project like the one on Livingston Avenue that created such concern over the summer would be able to happen in one of the other neighborhoods of the city. Now, to be fair, there are probably two groups of people who will not find this to be a positive development. The first is obviously the builders who take advantage of the opportunity to create additional building lots. This will create some additional expense and some additional time in the process of generating those developments. And the other group that may find this not to their liking are folks who have a piece of property in the city that is able to be subdivided today, and if they are planning to sell that property, might intend to sell it in a manner that that created an additional lot and perhaps created some additional value in the process. Now, those would be the folks who I think would not appreciate necessarily this. The folks who I think would appreciate this are the neighbors to those lots in question, who would now have an opportunity to participate in both evaluating whether the subdivision should proceed and also what the development would actually look like, and this would afford that opportunity. So with that, I will turn over to the public hearing, and I'll be happy to answer any questions at the conclusion of the public hearing.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? Before I close that portion of the public hearing, I just want to note for the record that we did receive the planning board recommendation. They held a public hearing on Thursday, September 8th, and they're recommending approval of the proposed zoning ordinance amendment. The That portion of the public hearing is now closed, and I will open it for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition, I believe we do have Dean Jenkins from 244 Fairmont Street registered to speak. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, and City Council members. My name is Dean Jenkins. I live at 244 Fairmont Street here in Lowell. And I'm a real estate developer here in the city, among other surrounding community in Merrimack Valley and so forth. I've been building in Lowell since 1998, and along with my business partner, Michael Giannetti from Billerica, we have built approximately 100-plus residential properties in the city of Lowell since 1998. We've worked on private developments, obviously, but we've also worked with some of the nonprofits and with city funding, the Coalition for a Better Acre and Women in Transition. We know the process. We go to the planning board all the time. We're in front of all the regulatory boards. We meet with Adam on a regular basis to discuss, how to make a property look right in the city, and how to make things work. And along with Division of Planning and Development and Adam, I think they do a fantastic job in the city of Lowell. And since I've been building here, things have changed and created a fairer process, I believe, for everybody concerned. I do believe this ordinance will hurt the individual landowner, frankly, though. I don't think there are very many of them who understand exactly what is going to take place out here today. And they'll be unduly burdened by the additional requirements of the engineering and so forth, and to create a special permit. In 2004, the City Council, that had 6 members, currently members of this council, voted to create a comprehensive zoning change. It was carefully planned. It took a lot of time. It ensured that the city's neighborhoods were no longer going to be overrun with condominiums or houses put in sideways, condominium projects splattered all over the place on the borders of residential zone and in single-family home type neighborhoods. And I remember that it took a long time. It was a process that took quite a long time. There's subcommittee meetings, and kind of like the goal was, hey, look, the economy is booming. Let's not, let's make sure that we're doing the right thing. We don't want to stop development because our city's moving along right now, and things seem to be going pretty good. But we do have to stop, what's happening with some of this development. And the city took a great deal of time and looked at every single zone. And they made the comprehensive changes. I remember back in 2003 and 4, there'd be about 2 or 3 newspaper articles a week with neighbors complaining about one project or another. And the city did need to do something about these unwanted projects. They took the time, they created new zoning, and they got it right. Part of the mandate at that point in time was to make sure that we increased the size of a lot of the lots in these zones, which you did. And also the mandate was to create more single-family home ownership in the city. And, I guess my point here is that I think mission accomplished. I mean, I think basically you see more single-family homes being built in the city of Lowell now than any other type of property in the neighborhoods. And I think maybe, I don't know for sure, but I know that we've developed over the last, 13 or 14 months, 7 single-family homes in the city with no other kind of development to go along with it. So, we build single-family homes because that's what the zoning created for us to do, okay? And I think this current proposal comes as a reaction by concerned neighbors on Livingston Street. We talked about it, Adam talked about it earlier, and what appeared to be an undersized or an A&R lot, undersized 7,000 square foot lot with 55 feet of frontage being built by a developer. However, 5 or 6 doors down from this property, the so-called property on Livingston Street, on the same side of the road, a home started and was built about 3 or 4 months prior to that zoning that had the same amount of frontage, that had approximately 7,000 square feet, same as this A&R lot, and also it started construction 3 months earlier. And the neighborhood didn't seem to be concerned about that particular development. I don't know if the word developer came into play there or what, but I think that it was really an isolated case, so isolated that half of the street didn't care what was happening down 3 months earlier. So I think, although with all due respect to that area, you know, creating more single-family homes is the way to go. But, you know, when we look at this, also, it seems like an isolated case. Been granted, that area of the city, I believe, to have historic significance. You know, I looked at, and I think it needed to be looked at, and I think that the council acted swiftly, you know, and changed the zoning to suburban residential, which requires 75 feet of frontage. I'm not saying the city got it wrong. They probably got it right. There's a lot of nice old homes in that neighborhood. And on top of the increase in zoning and frontage requirements, they're also, if somebody wants to develop in that neighborhood, they now, you know, have to go to the historic board and create something that blends in with the character of the neighborhood. So, you know, I think mission accomplished. You know, however, understanding zoning and understanding one's rights under the proposed ordinance is very difficult. I've spoken to other builders and attorneys who do business in the city every day, and they don't understand what's going on. You know, this is what I do for a living. You know, my partner and I spend a great deal of time, you know, researching and so forth. And now we're looking at it, and we're kind of the watchdog for better or for worse. We're the watchdog for the tax-paying community that you know, has a piece of property, that pays taxes on that property, knowing that they have some level of development, you know, and I guess part of it is, and I guess the concern is, you know, somebody's going to sell their property and move on, and that's when they subdivide, you know, and I don't think that's 100% accurate as to what's taking place. You know, we make properties, you know, I recently was involved in a property with my partner that, you know, the current owner still lives next door. I mean, some people have economic reasons for doing what they have to do. And I think, you know, if we just focus back on the mandate of 2004 and look at what's been happening in the city, you know, that mandate has been met. More single-family homes, you know, more input to the city. I think this is a very isolated case up there, and, you know, so I think mission accomplished. But again, property owners should be informed in a better way than what they're currently being informed about this. You know, I think a public notice in a newspaper, you know, cannot just be the first and last way that a land-owning, tax-paying person finds out about what's going on here, you know. And I think that there's probably a better process in which to be able to do that. You know, Adam was saying it's like 1.5 to 1% to 2%, maybe 1% of the people be informed by it. My suggestion has been and is to, why not inform those people of their rights within their land? I know the answer to that, because maybe they're going to develop their property. You know, maybe not today, maybe down the future, maybe for their child's education, or maybe, frankly, when you know, they need the money, you know, in an economy like this. So I think there are ways that we could probably inform the public about what's going on when it comes to this stuff. And I think right now they're basically, you know, being ignored. It's a small fraction of the population. Look, I'll go to another town. I'll build somewhere else. You know, you know, we'll do what we do as developers. You know, but I think the city of Lowell will be the worst for it, and particularly the property owner right now. My question is, what about the property owner that has potentially 2 existing lots besides his home? When he has to go in front of the planning board for a special permit, how much is going to be, you know, pushed on him to create 1 lot out of that? You know, and in fairness, you know, the zoning that's been enacted since 2004, in my opinion, I live here in the city, has worked. And so I don't think there's any reason to make this change. Finally, you know, we talk about notification, you know, the neighbors being involved in the process. And I agree. You know, I mean, whenever I'm going to go in front of a planning board or whenever I'm going to go in front of a board of appeals, you know, I meet with the neighbors. It's always a smart thing to do. So, you know, you don't end up on the wrong side of things, you know, that you basically can communicate what the problems are within that zone. And I think most developers, you know, do take the time to do that, because it's recommended that they do that from the Division of Planning and Development. But also, the notification process that existed was that prior to any new permit being issued in the city of Lowell, that a notification, a sign, was to be put out in front of the property, informing the neighbors of what was going to take place. And during this whole Livingston Street incident, that ordinance was being ignored. You know, it was being ignored by previous, so it's not something this inspectional service department, lays blame to. It's been going on for a while. It wasn't an ordinance that was created, that wasn't being followed through, that, said, okay, let's put a sign out in front of the properties. Let's talk about what's, letting people know what's going to be taking place in their neighborhood so that they could voice their concerns. I received many calls on the signs that I put up because your telephone number has to be on it. So we received many calls from people in the neighborhoods trying to figure out and find out what's going to go on. And most of the time, they're glad to see new construction. It does raise the value in their area, and it does promote, I believe, that those neighborhoods bringing their properties up to snuff, so to speak. But so that was a big part of it, so it was being ignored, and now it's being worked on. Why not give this a chance? Why not give it some time to see if this will work? And then finally, why not make every new A&R lot in the city subject to design review from the DPD? That would give some control to the city. So every single new construction permit, A&R lot, subdivision lot, right now that goes in front of the planning board has to do it. How much harder would it be on an A&R lot to make that part of the process, make the design review part of the process? And in doing so, I believe that if you were able to do something like that, you would see things like landscape design improve. So you would take some of these older neighborhoods that had, that have older established yards and older established areas, and you would be able to blend a new construction house in a much better way. That, a design review would allow the city to take some level of control and also give some input. You can couple that with, you either go design review to the Department of Planning and Development, or you have to basically meet with the abutting neighbors to a parcel of land, show them your design, get it signed off by those neighbors if they're local, and then you have the choice of going one way or the other. And I think they probably, there's somewhere in between there we could make things work. I think the biggest people that we're forgetting about right now is those 1%. And then finally, one of the biggest things that you got to look at in this special permit, it sounds very simple and very easy, but a special permit is very different from a regular approval process within a planning board. A special permit requires 4 out of the 5 planning board members to vote in affirmative to a plan. So under ordinary circumstances, under ordinary plans, it takes 3 votes for a planning board approval. So that again puts some undue burden. Also, and finally, a planning board has much more discretionary powers over a special permit. So, to me, it is probably another block against fairness to the people who currently own property. Again, I think that we had an isolated incident, on Livingston Street. I think that the city zoning has worked and done an effective job in most places. I think the mandate to create more fair and single-family homes has happened, and I think this is an isolated incident. I think you leave the zoning alone. I think you vote this ordinance down, and if you need to create, dialogue on some of these things that we've talked about right now, there are plenty of attorneys and developers who work exclusively and closely in the city who would be willing to be part of a process. It's not like we're all coming in here as the bad guy. We come in here and try to do right by the city. So, again, thank you for your time, and please vote this down.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank this council subcommittee on zoning for convening the meetings and getting down to the job of addressing this issue in our city. And we can all remember back in June or July, Mr. O'Brien was here from Livingston Avenue, and I still drive by that house every day. And it's still not finished. The driveway hasn't been installed. I also want to thank Adam Backey, the DPD, the Planning Board, and the Law Department for their involvement. Mr. Jenkins does not have to come to that podium and tell me that he's a good developer. He is. He's one of the finest developers in any city or town. He has built the alternative house on Bernier Street. He built 2 homes on Smith Street. And his craftsmanship is exemplary. He's an excellent developer. And I'm well aware of the home down further on Livingston Avenue. The only difference, Mr. Mayor, between those 2 homes, one of them fits the character of the neighborhood. Not one person on Livingston Avenue has a problem with that home because it's facing the street, it's small but adequate, and it fits in. This other home up Livingston Avenue is a disgrace, total disgrace. This council asked Adam Backey, DPD, the Planning Board, to address it. And they did. And I hope this council supports this. Because in this ordinance, or in this amendment, we're not telling a developer you cannot build unless you have 75 feet of frontage. You can still go to a neighborhood, have a hearing. That's the key, Mr. Mayor. The people have a voice. They can say, we don't have a problem, we like the house, it fits the character of the neighborhood, and we agree. Or they can say, no, like that house on Livingston Avenue, that should never, ever been built. Never. Never. So I'm going to support this, and I hope there's at least 4 other councilors to support it as well, because I think it's very important that we set some guidelines, because if we don't, the cities is just going to be ruined. And nice neighborhoods are going to be ruined as well. So we're not closing the door on developers. There is a chance that they can develop, have a hearing with the neighbors, and the neighbors will have a say. That's the key, that people will have a say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rita Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you think that Mr. Jenkins spoke a lot this evening, I had the pleasure of listening to him. I don't know, was it 2 or 3 hours or whatever? And he does make some good points. And I do know that his property that he has developed as a builder is second to none. No doubt about that. And I did know that he probably would want me to change my opinion and support his measure. And I did kind of weigh it on both sides. So I do have some comments and I do have some questions, but we did have people come up with a concern. We did refer these matters to the zoning subcommittee. We did have the zoning board look at this and take some measures. We had Adam Backey from the planning department put forth whatever was best to keep the character of the neighborhoods alive. I think that's our purpose here. And I'm sorry that I disagree with the gentleman, because he's a wonderful man and he made some good points. But this is what I want to do, as well as my colleagues. Public awareness. We're not operating this city in a vacuum. Neighbors shouldn't have to see a message board outside after the fact that said, we're going to develop this property. We already have the permit. We already have the excavator coming in, but you got the message board outside. It's a little bit too late. I don't know how we can get around a note, but I'd rather notify neighbors and have them be aware of it before they see a message board. I think it's a little bit too late. We're notifying you what we're doing, but you don't have a say in it. I think that's wrong as a city. And I feel bad for the 1.5% of the population that have paid all these years, hoping that maybe they could retire and sell that off to a developer that will put in 5 homes instead of 3 and leave the neighbors, while they've gone off to Florida to retire, to sit there and see all this happening. I'm sorry. I know progress. I know people want to make money. I know people want to cram in things, and I'm not saying this gentleman is doing that. He's not. But there are some of them out there that will do that, and it's up to this council to stop that from happening. Yes, again, I say, I'm sorry that the person spent their money to have an investment, which is for them to sell it off and subdivide it and stuff. But I also have an obligation to protect the character of the neighborhood. And to say that 5 doors down, the same thing happened, and it was an isolated, it was not isolated enough for me, because I did investigate. And I know that this person didn't get away with any shenanigans, but she did apply for a permit. She did conform to the character of the neighborhood. She did apply for a variance, but she also needed to go before a public hearing in the zoning department, which the neighbors were then notified, and the neighbors not only knew about it beforehand, they went there in support of this project taking place, and that's what I want to see happening. So that's exactly what happened down the street, not in the shade of darkness in the middle of the night. This happened right out in the open, and that person followed the letter of the law. I checked that out, because it troubled me to hear that somebody got away with something when they actually did not. So I did my research too. But I am concerned about those people that the 1.5% of the population that own this property. Do they pay more because they have that? Are they in a certain category where all these years they've paid more and we're stopping that from happening now? That they're still going to pay more, but they can't do what they want to with the property? How is this going? Is there someone here that can answer that question? I wish Susan LeMay was here. To me, they're paying a rate like everybody else. It's just that the zoning is changing, not their tax structure. They're still paying the same thing, is my idea of it. Maybe down the road, to say they paid all these years for property that they thought they could retire on by subdividing it with more, I don't buy that, because they didn't fit into a certain category of a taxpayer. They're paying the same now that they did, for that property. They're not in a special category, so that leaves that out. We should notify them. I don't know that there's a way that we can single-handedly notify them, but I don't know about that. But I'm just concerned that there is a stopgap in place, that they still have a chance that they can go back to the planning board and they could then get a variance. The only thing is, in this case, the neighbors would then be notified. The neighbors could come down and say, we don't mind your building, but can you run the water line this way so we don't have runoff into our basement or whatever? It's only a fair thing to do. No, with the special permit, you don't need 3 votes, you need 4. I mean, we're making it a little bit tougher, but we're trying to preserve the character of the neighborhood. So I'm sorry that this gentleman and I disagree, and I don't want you to go building out in Billerica. I assume you stay here, but that's my belief, and I'm letting it be that way.
Thank you. Councilman Donza?
Yes, I don't favor this change. I see it as we're trying to address 1.5% of our properties being possibly problematic by changing 75%. We're using a broad brush when an artist brush may be enough. We did change things in that particular neighborhood. It's now a historic district. We changed it from traditional single-family to suburban single-family, which by itself has higher frontage requirements. I don't like the idea, although it's very clever, of creating a loophole where it can be done by special permit. To me, it should be leave it as it is or make it more stringent. Not, well, those in the know get it done, which has happened in the past. You get your special permit, and people still get up and scream, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know that they were going to do that. Now, as far as the notification, we did address that. Before, it was the building permit that needed a notification on the street 2 weeks before. We've now made it that it's a building permit or a foundation permit. So the notification will now go up 2 weeks before any construction that goes on the site. I would rather see this, since we can identify the 1.5%, review those areas. Does that neighborhood, or should it be something more stringent? We can change the zoning in that case, if the character of the neighborhood is that way. If not, all we're doing is taking away rights of the property owners as they have it now. My other concern is, as we make it more strict, how many lots are we now making non-conforming? And what are the consequences of that? I have no idea. Not being a builder, developer, or knowing the zoning that well, I'm not sure what that would do, but I suspect that could create some problems for people down the road when they want to add an addition, or I'm not sure. But the frontage requirement will then be non-conforming. What will that mean to them? There was a time when things were grandfathered. This zoning eliminated some of that grandfathering. I don't know if this would still apply here. In any case, I still can't support it because of the loophole it creates.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. Councilman Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a couple questions for Mr. Bakey, if I could.
Bakey?
We'll start with that question right there about non-conforming status. So if I have a lot, and if you know the answer, fine. If not, we'll get to it some other way. But so I have a lot. Say it's it's non-conforming with respect to frontage, and I want to put a back porch on, and I have the room. So my understanding is you're entitled to a permit if you're not increasing the nature of the nonconformity. So does that kick that property now into a special permit, or was it a special permit already? Is it still possible to get a by right approval for an addition?
The simple answer to the very last question is yes. The more complicated answer is that the majority of the residential properties in the city's neighborhoods already are non-conforming by both lot area and zoning, and frontage. And that's actually very intentional, because the 2004 zoning that Mr. Jenkins mentioned, one of the sort of objectives that was discussed at length with the council at the time was to come up with zoning dimensional requirements that were similar to every block in the city, but slightly larger than the existing. So it effectively made almost every pre-existing lot in the city pre-existing non-conforming. Now the good news is that between case law and specific provisions that exist in our zoning code, that does not, having a non-conformity for one dimensional requirement does not prohibit you from doing things like putting additions or swimming pools or decks or whatever it may be, provided that the addition or swimming pool or deck or whatever it is conforms to the setback requirements and other things that would impact it. And do not, as you put it, increase the non-conforming nature of the lot by themselves. And so that there's a number of provisions in our zoning that allow that. There also are provisions in our zoning that allow, when someone has a pre-existing non-conforming lot and a building is lost to fire or some other disaster, you are allowed to rebuild, even if it is in a non-conforming manner, as long as it's consistent with what was lost. And so this doesn't really change that fact for anyone at all in any significant way.
I have one other question, and that I was intrigued by Mr. Jenkins' suggestion that perhaps it could be a design review process for all A&R lots, but I'm not sure we can do that. Do you have a view on that?
I'm also intrigued by that idea. I don't believe we can. I don't believe that the state law would allow us to explicitly link something to a procedure that they have said is basically a by right procedure. I think that would create almost a discretionary aspect of something that the state law says has to be by right. But I'd have to think about it a little more to see if there is a way we could get at that type of an issue if that was the will of the council to go that route. I do believe what is proposed here by essentially attaching a special permit process to an activity that, in the absence of this zoning change, is presently governed by the approval not required law, changes the nature of how people are applying in a way that opens the door to having that discretionary review process and attaching the design review to it. There may be other ways that we could attach design review to different types of projects, but it isn't immediately clear to me how we would practically implement that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few comments, if I could.
Yes, Council Martin?
You know, I appreciate Mr. Jenkins' comments. I think they're very thoughtful and well considered. I, like some of the previous speakers, don't necessarily agree with all of them, but you know, when I was involved in 2004, heavily involved at that time, and I think what I said at that time was this was a significant improvement, but it was likely not perfect, and that it would continue to be needed to be reviewed periodically. And I think we did that in 06 or 07 with some updates, and there's probably been a few other minor technical amendments. This is maybe, you know, probably the most significant change since we did that in 2004. But you know, there was a lot of publicity about what happened. There were referrals to subcommittees. A subcommittee met, you know, an advertised open meeting. The planning board has had an advertised meeting about this. So, you know, perhaps not everybody who's affected by this is aware of this, but when you have kind of zoning rights and grandfathering rights, you know, you're charged with some sort of obligation, I think, to act to protect those and weigh in. In 2004, we rezoned much of the city without really much formal notice to anybody, and without a whole lot of complaint after the fact either by those whose parcels were affected, which is somewhat remarkable. I think it speaks well to the process that we employed. And I don't think that process was a whole lot different than this process. It might have gotten a little less publicity, you know, but we don't necessarily control that. So as I said, I'm intrigued by this other idea. I'd encourage Mr. Baker to take a look at it. But I think I at the zoning subcommittee said I thought this was a good approach. I don't think it creates loopholes, and I don't think it creates, you know, you know, with due respect to my colleague, Councilman Donza, I don't think, you know, this is something for somebody who's in the know now. I mean, what I think this does was an effective compromise. It increases the frontage, but for those people who want to use their existing frontage, there's a process by which they can go by the old rules if they have a project that's going to fit well in the neighborhood and get the votes of the planning board. So I thought it was a good compromise. I still think that it may be something that we need to look at again. And maybe this, some sort of design review, if it can be tied to, you know, maybe not to A&R lots, but lots of a specific size or other type character, that might be something that's better than this, and we could revisit this. But I think for now, I think this is the best thing we've come up with. I think it's a pretty good and well-considered approach. I think the comments made against it were also pretty thoughtful and deserve consideration, but we have to decide, right? And so I come down, I think, on the side of the ordinance for now, although I'm willing to consider this other approach at a later date if that needs to be. One last point that I'm not sure was brought up tonight, but it's been brought up in the past, is that, you know, we're going to increase the number of special permit requests potentially on the planning board. You know, it's a 5-member board. You need 4 votes by state law. We can't really change that. But there are times when people just can't make the meeting, and there really does need to be, I think, an alternate or 2 on the planning board. I know that's something DPD has been looking at, but I think if we're going to do this, we need to follow through and do that as well. So I just encourage the manager to come back with something on that, you know, as soon as practical. And that's really what I have to offer on this.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I chaired the zoning subcommittee. I was obviously at the meeting, and I was supportive of the concept of increasing the frontage necessary and reducing it back in terms of getting us with the availability of a special permit. The concern I had at the time, and also at the regular meeting, I think, was that we should look at this neighborhood by neighborhood. That we don't want to take a broad brush approach. I didn't support a moratorium. I think that we have to look at this in terms of the needs of each individual particular neighborhood. Now, I know that would take a lot of time and resources, and I do appreciate this document, and I think it was the general concept was very creative, and I congratulated Mr. Bakey on that at the time. I'm a little concerned, though, that we basically applied it across the city, and that there are some areas that it may not be a problem, and we may create problems for property owners. And there are situations, and we've already taken action in Livingston, the Livingston area, that we can prevent it. So I would prefer to do this more of a neighborhood by neighborhood or zone by zone, is going through the map in a more detailed manner. I'm not opposed, we may come up with the same outcome, but I would prefer that we do it in a more controlled way, and maybe involve a little some of the neighborhood groups in terms of getting some feedback. And I'm not suggesting that we didn't do that, but I'm not too certain here, and my concern is that we're applying the same standard in a historic district in the Highlands as we are in back central, or some of the other the Acre, some of the other more congested areas where it's maybe prohibitive now in going forward. So I do have those concerns. I am also intrigued by the idea of having a design review process on top of the A&R, but I do think that it's probably not allowed because the state law would trump us, and I don't think we can put a restriction after the fact. So I don't hold up much hope for that, but I would prefer to go through this on a little bit more detailed neighborhood by neighborhood to come up with something. It may be the same, and I'm not saying that this wasn't done, but that would be my preference. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When the Livingston project came before the city council, I think those of us that sat on the subcommittee back in '04 were kind of scratching our heads because we thought we took precautions and we implemented changes to the zoning code that would prevent a project like that taking place. And at the time we did, and Mr. Bakey and his staff back in '04, they were dealing with multiple cases of zoning that was not consistent with the neighborhoods. And the city was, the development in the city was not what residents, what neighborhood groups, what individual homeowners were satisfied with. And I thought we made great strides in putting a zoning code in place that was suitable to the people in the neighborhoods. And I think, as Council Martin mentioned, I think we all reiterated at that point in time, because of the magnitude of zoning in the different districts and the numerous neighborhoods that we had, that there probably were going to be some changes from here on out. And I think this is a good example of a change that we need to put in place. As good as our planning department is, and as much as we try to prevent developments from taking place like the Livingston Street, developers seem to be one step ahead of us, and they're able to, they're able to put homes onto lots that don't belong there, put the round, the round peg and the square peg in the round hole. So I'm going to support this. I did speak to Mr. Jenkins and for quite some time, and I agree. I think he had some good points, some valid points, but I hope he understands the position that we're in. I'm not sure that that we're allowing loopholes. From what I understand, I sit in the zoning subcommittee. I think the special permit, it's an opportunity for for landowners or homeowners to plead their certain circumstances. And there's that board that will make that determination whether that should be allowed or not. And it's a second level of protection, I feel. So I am going to support this. I think we'll continue to look at this. I understand Council Broderick's point, going neighborhood by neighborhood, but I think we're all concerned, or I'm concerned anyway, that we're going to have another Livingston Street development pop up somewhere, and then we're going to be backtracking, trying to backpedal again as to, how did this happen when we consistently go through a review, and we have a planning development department that I think are very vigilant and trying to put zoning, a good consistent zoning plan in place for the entire city. So I want to congratulate Planning and Development for coming up with this. They went to great lengths and really studied the issue to bring this forward, and it's another level of protection, I think. So that won't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate the creativity, really, that the Planning Department has shown in coming up with a proposal like this, but I also share Councilor Broderick's concerns that he articulated in how it's applied and in trying to do it in perhaps a more focused way, because as surprised as some people on Livingston Avenue were, I think you'll find that there will be people who are equally surprised on the other side of things, who have property rights as of now that might not be able to fulfill those in the future. And it's not necessarily the case that they build 5 houses on a lot and run off to Florida, as was suggested, but that you may have a family that has been really keeping a portion of their lot to build another house for a family member, for a daughter or a son who wants to start a family next door, and was working under the assumption for many years now that they'd be able to do that. I do think that we need to do it in a more systematic way, as creative as the proposal was, to make sure that it does fit for each of the neighborhoods, because there are neighborhoods, I think, that can handle more density, not necessarily the kind that I think has happened in the past. Back Central has had all kinds of condominium developments that should not be there. But there are other areas that can handle more density and in the same way preserve those property rights that do exist now. So I would support the more gradual approach to looking at the areas really piece by piece, and making sure that not only do we come up with something that fits those areas, but that the people in those areas are fully aware of. Because like I say, I think you will find after this is potentially adopted that people who haven't been really paying attention will go to try and build something on a lot that they considered to be legal, and then we'll find that they have to go through an excessive and more costly process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? What's the wish of the council? The chair is looking for a motion. Councilor Caulfield?
Before you take a roll call,
I need a motion. Move approval by Councilor Elliott.
Move approval.
Second by Councilor Martin.
Second, as to the ordinance as originally presented.
Correct. That's correct. We don't have anything else on the floor. Councilor Caulfield?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been suggestions that there's loopholes in this amendment. If there's loopholes in this amendment, the loopholes are to protect the people who live in that particular neighborhood. Right now, they don't have no protection at all. Right now, the developer has the right to address the neighborhood. Would you approve this plan? Here's the plan that I propose and so forth. They didn't have that before. Now they have that. We're not shutting the door on people selling their property or their land or building another house. What's before us, and I have to commend and Becky and the planning board for coming up with this amendment. It's given everyone a chance, but the people who are going to benefit are the people like on Livingston Avenue who had no say, nothing. And they went, well, that neighborhood, as far as I can see, has been hurt drastically about it. And this is going to help the entire city. The entire city will benefit by this, and the people who live here.
Thank you. Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me do this scenario a little bit differently. This couple is married, they're up in age, they have a child that grew up, they want to have that extra property land that they have to build someday for their child to grow up and live there. Because we're making this ordinance a little bit more stringent, they don't have enough frontage to do that. So now what we're saying is, we're not going to stop you from doing it. We just have extra things that you have to do. So now you can go and apply for a variance. Now your neighbors are going to be notified. They have a right to a public hearing. They tell their story to the neighbors, and it conforms to the rest of the area. I don't see the problem. So instead of getting 3 votes, they need 4. But if the neighbors approve of it and are supportive of it, I'm certainly sure that can happen. So we're not stopping development. We're just making it a little bit tighter so that the people aren't sliding things in sideways, and we're not operating under a cloud of secrecy. I won't allow that to happen, and I think that's where we're going with this.
Thank you. Council Murphy? Then we'll
Thank you. Just to respond to a number of points. One is that we do have protections in place. That's what the zoning code is. We talked about how much thought did go into that back in 2004. I think when a change is made, we have to give at least equal thought to those changes. And even though we might find that problems arise, I don't think we can just give a sort of knee-jerk reaction to how we address it. There are going to be issues, I think, after this potential adoption, where people aren't aware of what's going on, and costs are added to the construction, so that it may in fact be rendered unfeasible for people to carry through what they had hoped to do before. The suggestion here is not either or. Either we pass this or we don't. The suggestion I think that Councilor Broderick was making was that we find a different way of being able to achieve the same goals that everyone here has articulated, but doing so while preserving property rights and in a kind of process that is, more participatory. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion. It's been seconded. Councilor Elliott.
I just want to clarify. If we don't adopt this, then the frontage remains the same, and we could be faced with developments similar to Livingston Ave that don't have to go through any public review process, that will just creep up again, and we're going to have neighbors upset with the development going on in the neighborhood. So I don't agree with the case-by-case basis, because I think we're not being proactive. I think this is the proactive way to do it. There's still the review process. It's a better notification process. I just had one question, Mr. Mayor. I should have asked it earlier. Mr. Baker, 101%, what does that, what is the number or quantity for parcels of property?
It ends up being, there's probably 300 or 400 parcels in the city that are subject to subdivision by A&R. And the reality is they are located in every neighborhood and in every zoning district. And the reason why the approach was presented as a sort of approach that covers all of the residential zoning districts is because the opportunity for something similar to Livingston Avenue exists in all of them. It's not great in any of them. There are not many in any of them, but it does exist in all of them. And the proposal does differentiate between neighborhoods where the character is such that denser development and smaller dimensional requirements are consistent, and the proposal actually maintains that, just like the current zoning does. While the frontage increases everywhere, it remains at different levels depending on where in the city that you are. So some of that more nuanced look at the different neighborhoods of the city has already taken place. But obviously, if it's the wish of the council, we'd be happy to discuss that further with the council.
And I knew I didn't know the exact number, but to me, that's a large number of parcels to try to manage on a case-by-case basis, and to have planning and development have to keep an eye out for some of these circumstances. And I think that's why we're trying to plan. We're trying to put in procedures to prevent this from happening again. And I think I do think it's a creative way, so residents can be at rest to some degree. They don't have to worry and look over their shoulders that something's going to take place that took place previously. Thank you, Mayor, for the second
Did
opportunity.
you want to hear it? Council Broderick? No, okay. On the motion, Council Murphy, third time. Go ahead.
I'm just going to respond to a point that was made, and that was on the case-by-case basis. I was saying on an area, neighborhood-by-neighborhood basis, not that you go through one by one. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Mendonça?
No.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
No.
Counselor Broderick?
No.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
7 yeas, 3.
The motion passes 6-3. Moving on to the next public hearing. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the code of the City of Lowell as amended with respect to Chapter 222 thereof entitled Peace and Good Order by adding a new Section 222-13 Library Child Safety section thereto to address restrictions on sex offender access to the Pollard Library. The public hearing is now open for those wishing to speak in favor of the ordinance. For those wishing to speak in favor of the ordinance. Good evening, Victoria.
Good evening. I'm Victoria Woodley, Director of the Library, and I thought it might be helpful if I expressed my viewpoint on this proposed new section to the city ordinances. In general, most librarians do not support restricting access to information or placing restrictions on groups of library users. However, over the past year, 2 incidents involving level 3 sex offenders that were at the Pollard Library has come to the attention of our city councilors. Thankfully, in neither case were any patrons approached or harmed by the sex offenders involved. The councilors felt that it would be appropriate and prudent for the library to be more proactive in keeping track of level 3 sex offenders while they are using the library. And to that end, the city solicitor has written this new ordinance. We presently have a procedure in place at the library which instructs staff to tell a supervisor when they see a level 3 sex offender at the library. The supervisor then in turn notifies the police that the individual is at the library. We don't allow level 3 sex offenders to go into the children's area or interact with children anywhere in the library, and we would notify the police if a sex offender violated these restrictions. This new ordinance would extend these restrictions by not allowing the level 3 sex offender to be at the library during certain times of the day when school-age children are likely to be in attendance, and the onus will be placed on the sex offenders to make themselves known to library staff by checking in and out of the library, notifying staff when they wish to use restrooms, or browse for materials in our stacks. I support the passage of this new ordinance because it will give our patrons another measure of protection from sexual predators while still allowing level 3 sex offenders to access the library for legitimate informational needs. This ordinance is a legal method, as determined by our city solicitor, of protecting our patrons without abrogating the First Amendment rights of other people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Wishing to speak in favor? In favor, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition, the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Council Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank my colleagues on the Public Safety Subcommittee, Councilor Elliott, Councilor Dakota. And I also want to thank the solicitor, Chris O'Connor, for coming up with a ordinance I think we can all live with. We didn't have one meeting. We didn't have 2 meetings. We had 3, maybe 4 meetings. And we looked at the New Bedford ordinance. We looked at the Somerset ordinance. And we also discussed the issues that happened, I believe, in New Mexico. And the main issue was affecting the rights, the First Amendment rights, the 14th Amendment rights of people. And I want to applaud the solicitor for coming up with this verbiage, because what we have here, I think we have an ordinance that many communities are going to be contacting the city and they're going to ask for a copy. I'll just read you a few things here, Mr. Mayor. Prohibition. It shall be unlawful for a level 3 sex offender to violate any of the following provisions regarding the use of the Pollard Memorial Library. 1, level 3 sex offenders are prohibited from entering or being present on library grounds during designated scheduled hours. These shall include every weekday during the Lowell Public School year from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. to coincide with student study period. Every weekday during the Lowell Public School summer vacation from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. to coincide with summer morning children activities. Every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Additional times for special children activities as determined by the library staff. Oh, I'm sorry. I can go on and on and on and read all of these to you, but the paragraph that has so much strength in it is this one. Any violation of this ordinance found after a hearing, if one is so requested by a level 3 sex offender, will result in a lifetime ban of use of the Pollard Memorial Library. The Massachusetts Sex Offender Registry Board, the Parole Board, and parole officers of the offender will immediately be informed of the violation. That speaks volumes. And we're not saying to a level 3 sex offender, you can't go in there. We're not saying that. Say you can go in there on certain hours, and if you violate this ordinance, you'll never go back. And I think that's very, very important. So I want to thank Councilor Elliott and Councilor Dakota, especially Councilor Elliott, for bringing this forward. I want to thank the trustees at the library for being so understanding. And hopefully we'll have something in place where everyone can live peacefully and they can live in a good environment where they're safe. So that's my comments, and I hope that the council will support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. Anyone else? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief because I know that we've spent a lot of time on this. I'd like to thank Victoria Woodley and her staff, as well as the Library Board of Trustees. I know this has not been I know it's not been an easy issue to discuss, and while I would like to have seen a little bit a more strict version, I believe that we have to compromise, because I think it's important to put additional restrictions on these sex offenders in place. I am concerned that, as Victoria said, that the onus lies on the level 3 sex offender, that they have to come in and check in, they have to check out, they don't know, they're restricted to certain areas, and the onus also falls on the staff of the library. I understand the concerns of people's rights, which is one of the reasons why, or the reason why I brought this up. I think the people that use the library, their rights supersede the rights of level 3 sex offenders. But I am going to support this because it is, there are additional restrictions, and considering the circumstances that take place, I want to see something put in place rather than put nothing in place. So thank you, Chairman Caulfield and Council Dakota. We have met multiple times for many, many hours, and we will have a law on the books that that'll provide additional protections for the people in the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? The chair would like a motion to approve the ordinance as presented. So moved by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Elliott. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Mendoza?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the Board of Trustees of the library who are here, as well as Victoria Woodley and her staff. Thank you. The next public hearing is the loan order for finance the upgrades at the Lowell Regional Wastewater Utility. We did have a subcommittee. We actually have to go through one procedural step before I open up the public hearing, and we are going to have a presentation as well. And that is to ask Councilor Elliott to report out the subcommittee, which actually is recommending that we reduce the loan amount from $26,274,000 to $10,450,000 for the purpose of conducting the public hearing, and that would need to be accepted by the council on a roll call vote. So I would ask Councilor Elliott to move that. I believe that was a recommendation of the Finance Subcommittee.
I'm not sure if we had a recommendation. Was it? I think it was just a report of progress that the manager was bringing in this different loan order. So,
Okay. So we'll accept that as a report of progress, but I do need a motion to reduce the dollar amount.
So moved.
Yeah.
So moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor
I didn't have any objection, Mayor. I just
Right.
wanted to make sure. I
Right.
didn't think we had a vote. Did we, Councilor Broderick? No, I don't think we voted. I think we were just going to bring it in saying this was...
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily properly before us.
Okay.
But it was there to discuss.
Okay. Well, anyway, procedurally, the first vote is to reduce the amount to $10,450,000. We have a motion that's been seconded. Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Mendoza?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Before us now, we do have the loan order, Lowell Regional Water Utility Upgrade Bonds, to borrow $10,450,000 for the purpose of financing the cost of upgrades to the Lowell Regional Water Utility water system in the city of Lowell. Before I open up the public hearing, I'd like to recognize the city manager. I know there's a presentation that we'll be getting prior to the public hearing. Manager Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just by way of explanation, and I think I discussed this with Councilor Elliott and the Finance Subcommittee, and I know a number of members were present when we made the presentation to the subcommittee. We had come forward, as you know, back in August with a presentation or a proposal to move forward with a number of different ideas or elements related to improvements at the water utility, both at the plant and off-site. The concept behind that was we wanted to bring this to the council to address all of the needs that we had identified as being pressing and needing to be done. Particularly in light of the clear indications from the state and from the federal government that much of the reimbursements that we're receiving will be drying up, as it were, over the course of the next year and onwards. And so we felt it was imperative that we bring in as the best possible project for the city, and one that had minimal impact on rates, but we also wanted to bring in the rate increase at the time of the vote so that people knew what the implications were. And I felt that the council acted appropriately in saying, you know, we want to certainly improve the water utility, but we also want to put some type of control on the water rates at this point in time, and asked us to go back and revisit, which we did. And we came back with the proposal that you have in front of you, which doesn't address all of the needs at the water utility. We will have to address those needs in the future. I think it's imperative that we continue to invest in our infrastructure, and certainly water is a key part of that. But what you have before you is a set of proposals or a slate of projects that we think are of the highest priority, that can be done without impacting the rates, and we feel it's a good compromise to bring before the council. We do have a presentation that we had made before. We'll be happy to make it again to the City Council, walking you through the elements of this proposal, if the council so desires.
What's the wish of the council? Go forward with the proposal, presentation? Okay. Good evening, Mr. Lahiff.
Mr. Lahiff will run you through the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, Council. The first slide is the reduced scope, pretty much the same slide that we had before you last time we were here. The original loan request for $26,274,000. Although we still feel all the projects are still critical to maintain the water utilities' reliable and high-quality service, this is what we have had to reduce. The reduced loan request is now $10,450,000. This maximizes, and what this does is this actually allows us to implement what we prioritized as far as what we think is most important to us to enhance our system without a rate increase. The project funding, this indicates what we're going to be paying. This is also indicates how it's advantageous for us at this time to take advantage of these funds. Again, as the manager mentioned, these funds might not be available down the road. The SRF, State Revolving Fund, is a 2% loan for most of the project. That saves you about $200,000 a year as opposed to a regular bond, a 4 or 5% bond. Principal forgiveness is estimated at 5 to 10% of the SRF loan funded. Again, we'll know this, I believe, the end of April, maybe early May. We'll have a definitive number on that. That's in the savings of $400,000 to $800,000. And the solar renewable energy credits, SRECs, that generates about $80,000 to $100,000 a year. That's what the power companies pay back to you. That's a conservative number. We're estimating 30 cents kilowatt hour. A lot of power companies right now are paying about 40. The estimated cost, this is what we reduced from our water main replacement, large valve, and hydrant replacement installations. The reduced project from $10,457,000 to about $3 million. This project includes the redundant water main. We talked about this last time. We had the redundancy from the pump station to the treatment plant. Now we want to go the other way from the treatment plant out to the public. This is critical to the operations of the system. Back, I believe it was October 2009, we had a break on that repair that I believe the number was about $700,000 to $800,000 to fix. But we did have to shut down that night. We were out of water for about 8 hours. And sun was rising, and we saw a low in pressure, the hospital in the area very quickly. So that was a good indicator of how critical it is to have that redundant water main from that end out. Conservatively, we have about 1 day of water supply. That's if everybody adheres to conservation, doesn't fill their toilets, and I mean, not their toilets, their bathtubs and everything else, which usually happens when you put a scare out there. The estimated cost for the water treatment plant, raw water intake station, and pump station improvements, this also includes the solar panels. We reduced that from 10.8 to about $7 million. This is the rehab of the 60-year-old Stackpole Street pump station, and also includes the high-efficiency pumps and the pumping in that. That station is about 60 years old. The pumps are critical. That's something that we went through again. Last February, we had a main break out there. Had we not had reservoirs in New Beacon Street Station, Lower Centerville would have been out of water as well. So that's another critical component that needs to be improved. The estimated cost for the funds at the water treatment, raw water intake stations, pump stations, again including the solar panels, photovoltaic. Again, the installation, this is about 60,000 square feet that we figure is going to be estimated what we'll be receiving our power from. The SRF funding and solar renewable credits, again, 80 to about 100,000 K annually, and that's $2.5 million for the installation of that. Removal of just a portion of the water treatment plant lagoons that we have across the street. That's our residuals and sludge. Hopefully, we'll be working with wastewater. They'll be able to take some of that. That'll alleviate cost as far as the operations of that. Raw water pump station, treatment plant upgrades. Again, we have a parapet wall up there. The raw water pump station, again, is 55, 60 years old. It's in dire need structural-wise. New heating system, monitoring system, equipment, flow meters, and some valves that we need as far as the plant. And surge protection, which is very critical so we don't lose power, so we get struck. Estimated cost for the water meter replacement, we reduced that from $4.5 million to $450,000. We've identified about 1,000 meters that are problematic. And what I mean by that is that they can be anything from no accessibility, estimated reads. And these are things that we need to replace. Currently, the residential meters are approximately 20 years old. This improves our customer service and also, again, it improves the system as far as through our new fixed antenna radio read system. These meters will have the capability of being read automatically. These are the components that we had to take out to reach the number that we had to. We took out about 12,000 linear feet of water main, valve, and hydrant replacement. Only the work near the water treatment plant is included. Municipal interconnections, we were working on that. We have the ability to feed other towns. We don't have the ability to take back should we lose water for any potential minimal fire protection that they might be able to provide to us. Residual piping and sampling equipment at the water treatment plant and some flow isolation equipment. That's pretty much just part of the process. Water meter replacement, again, the original project included the replacement of half of the residential meters. Now we're only going to be replacing the meters, which we have problems with obtaining the readings. Total estimated cost, water main replacement, valve, hydrant installations, $3 million. Water treatment facility, raw water intake, and pump station improvements, including solar, $7 million. Meter replacement, $450,000, for a total of $10,450,000. Again, SRF loans save the city approximately $200,000 a year. Principal forgiveness, $400,000 to $800,000, and the credits from the solar panels, $80,000 to $100,000 a year. As the manager mentioned, future project is likely to be reduced. I'm not sure, so the SRF loan currently, from the word we're getting, is currently going to be reduced by anywhere from 25% to 35%. It's a more competitive process now, and the Commonwealth application that we worked with the DEP is no longer going to be acceptable, and we've always scored very high, which puts you high on the priority list as far as appropriating the monies. And that's pretty much a review of what we went through last time.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions of Mr. Leif before I open the public hearing? Thank you again, Mr. Leif. At this point, I will open the public hearing on the loan order to borrow $10,450,000 for the purpose of financing the costs outlined in the presentation of the upgrades to the Lowell Regional Water Utility water system in the city of Lowell. Public hearing is now open for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor. In favor. That portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition. In opposition. The public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Council Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a few questions for Dan. I hope I can pronounce this photovoltaic installation?
Photovoltaic.
Yeah. What's the purpose of that?
Those are solar panels.
What's that?
Solar panels.
So what are they going to do to improve the water in the city of Lowell?
Well, it won't improve the water, but what it will do is it will improve our efficiency and our power.
And how much is that
also be a
gonna,
revenue creating.
I saw in this, it was $7 million. Am I right by saying that?
So that's $2.5 million
2.5 million?
for solar panels. That's
For
correct.
solar panels.
That's going to give you a payback almost immediately of $80,000 to $100,000 a year.
Yeah. In the last 12 years, we've invested $42 million in that plant, and then maybe a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, there was a request to borrow 26 million on top of that. And attached to that vote was a 17% water increase. How do I know this isn't going to increase the water rates by voting for this?
It was noted in the presentation. It said no water increase.
No water increase.
Right.
Not in 2011, but maybe in 2012. I agree with you, Dan, that the valve on Stackpole Street, that needs replacing. I understand that. But we also going to have that water tank in place on 10th Street pretty soon, aren't we?
Right. That's the pump station, Counselor. We're rehabbing the entire pump station at the Stackpole Street station, not only the valves. We're going to be doing the rehab of the pumps for more efficiency, and we're also going to be doing the piping underneath, which is archaic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not just valves that we're going to be doing there. We're actually going to be improving the whole station.
But that's 1.2 million to replace that, right?
I believe it is.
Right. Not 10 million.
No.
Right.
Ideally, we'd like to put what we put up in the Beacon Street station. We hope that we have the same footprint, that we can literally drop same type of station there.
I just want to say you do an excellent job there, and so don't the men and women who work there. And I'm just going to keep an open mind on this vote because I'm undecided right now. So I'll relinquish it to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. Mr. Moses did just pass out a forecast for the Water Enterprise Fund. So I'll give my colleagues time to review that. And if anybody has any questions, they can certainly direct those to Mr. Moses. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe at the subcommittee meeting, we discussed some of these issues, particularly the water rate increase. And I remember stating that I think I had asked you for the information on the last loan order to be brought in at the same time in terms of rate increases so that we would all know what it is up front that we were voting for, that we were going to require to fund later. And that's why one of the reasons it was on, I know, Mr. Manager, you brought it in on your own. You didn't have to. But I believe we were told this would not require a rate increase for at least 5 years, or you went out 5 years?
This goes out to 2016, and you can see there's a fund balance, ending fund balance each one of those years in the positive without a rate increase. And this is the projections that we have based upon the water revenues that we receive, and so on. It includes the revenue that we receive from the solar panels that will be installed. That's shown here as the miscellaneous other revenues that comes in, but it does show that there would not be a rate increase for 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just one more question.
Councilor Caulfield.
Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, if the $26 million loan went through, you indicated there'd be a 17% water increase.
It would need a 17% water
17%.
Right.
On $26 million. Last year, the council voted, I didn't support, a 24% increase.
Correct.
So that would have been a 41% increase in the water rates. Now, if you're telling me you don't need a water increase rate for $10 million for the next 5 years, but you were going to need one for $26 million.
Right.
There's $16 million there that's just floating around.
Right.
That's
we cut that back. And let me point out, Councilor, that the 24% increase that was necessary was not, that was needed because of prior votes that the council had taken over a number of years to invest in the water plant. It wasn't just, let's go and increase the rates for the purpose of increasing the rates. And that's specifically why I think Councilor Broderick asked that in the future we take up water rates at the time of the loan order, and that and we support that. We think that people should know right up front what this is going to cost. It's easy to vote for a project, but it obviously isn't easy to vote for the rate increase. So we felt it was necessary to bring it forward. This one, because of the components of it, it actually, much of it actually comes in helping us with some of our revenue. The solar panels produce revenue. The meter replacements produce revenue. Those are the types of things that we're doing to make the enterprise funds more self-sustaining without rate increases. So the $26 million project was going to require a rate increase of 17%. But we've been able to eliminate that by going to the smaller project, some of which pays for itself, the components.
So what you're saying, Mr. Manager, is the votes of previous councils to improve the water plant was the reason for the rate increase last year?
The 24%, yes.
And 5 years from now, someone can say, or 3 years from now, because of the council vote in 2011, we have to raise the water increase?
No,
13%.
actually not. What's that?
Or 13% or 7?
No, you shouldn't have to. Now, if you do more improvements down the road, then you'll have to look at rate increases. But for this, because of debt coming off and the fact that we have the rates where they are, it pays for it will be able to be accommodated within this schedule.
Thank you. Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Tom Moses, Danny Layev come up and said that the solar renewable energy credits would generate $80,000 to $100,000 a year, and you just passed out a water enterprise forecast. Is there any reflection of that savings on this forecast? Because I don't see it.
That's actually additional revenue. If you look at the miscellaneous other line, you see it jump from 154,000 to 290,000. That's actually 140,000 increase. There are a few other things going on in there besides the solar. And you'll notice metering benefits from the ongoing metering projects. But one thing I'd like to point out, a lot of things changed since the last rate increase. If you remember at the time, I said that we would likely produce a surplus in fiscal 12 because we needed to raise rates during that year enough to carry us forward in the future, but it was actually going to be more than we needed in 2011. Well, we did even better than that. We ran a surplus of $1 million. So what that did is created cushion out in the future. That reduced your need to have other rate increases. And that's part of the reason that you can now borrow $10 million without raising the rates.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. So at the bottom of this worksheet, Mr. Moses, the 24.3%, that is effective in its entirety this year? Are there any other? I thought it was a staggered increase.
No.
Over a period of years.
That rate was effective January 1st of 2011. Okay. So that rate was in effect for half of 2011. It will be in effect for the full year in 2012, which is why you see rate revenue increase so dramatically in 2012.
Right, so people's bills are gonna, they did see the increase already, and now it's just gonna be consistent for the next 4 quarters.
That's correct. There's no further rate increase in 2012.
Can you tell me what the principal and interest is going to be on this loan order?
We're anticipating $800,000 and declining. It's on a separate line called debt service, a new authorization.
Okay. As I mentioned today, that just for me personally, for any other communications, I got this today at 3 because you emailed it to me, but for my other colleagues sitting here and trying to digest all of this information is on such a loan order, we're kind of at a little bit of a disadvantage, and that's why I'm asking about loan orders. So it's $800,000 a year for that loan order. Is that what you said?
Correct.
For 20 years?
It actually declines. It's declining principal, so the last year will be $400,000.
Okay. I understand the energy credits, the SRECs. And I think that's a positive thing with the solar panels. I just had a question. I don't know if you know the answer to this. Maybe Mr. Laef does. What is the useful life of those solar panels?
I don't.
Useful life will be about 20 years.
Oh, 20 years, okay. I understand the rates, there's no need for rates for 5 years, but I guess I have some of the similar sentiments that Councilor Caulfield does. You say debt service goes down, it's not reflected on this sheet. Maybe it goes down later in the out years, but from here it goes up in 2013, 2014 it starts to go down and seems to level off. So my concern is at some point in time, $800,000 has to come from something, and where is it going to come from? I mean, we're saying we're creating savings from these energy credits, but I would presume that is to reduce the cost of the electricity at the plant. I mean, where is the $800,000 going to come after, the revolving loan fund? And my other question is, why is there such a discrepancy in some of these numbers between, or maybe you have an answer, between, I'll say on page 2, the variance of 400 to 800. Why is there such a variance between that number? City saves between 4 and 800. And right above that, estimated principal forgiveness estimated at 5 to 10%.
That's what they're incurring.
Good evening. My name is Jim Ravad. I'm with Woodard & Curran. That's the estimate that we've been given by DEP. They are definitely going to have principal forgiveness. They said it could be as high as 10%, but it may be as low as 5%. It depends on how much loans they give out to different communities. And we'll know that number. The minimum is 5%. They're saying a maximum of 10%. And we'll know that number sometime in April or May of next year.
Okay. Okay, those are my concerns. I understand we're saying that there's no rate increase, but I mean, there's a lot of variables that still need to be answered to this, and quite frankly, I'm skeptical of how we're going to pay for this. At some point in time, $10 million is $10 million after the credits are gone, and the loan forgiveness. I'm just concerned about it and the impact that it is going to have on rates.
We are covering the debt service out of ongoing revenues. So in the case where we're immediately covering that $800,000, as it declines, you'll need less and less revenue to cover that. It's all part of this analysis, and the rates currently cover it. So if they cover it now, they're going to cover it in 5 years.
Well, I understand your point, but that's a pretty small margin. If you're looking at 800 in debt service and you're looking at a fund balance of 937 now, and then it doesn't jump much higher for 5 years out, covering that debt service, knowing that some of these additional costs, pension assessment, Medicare, health, dental insurance, and I know we're working on the health insurance, but we're operating on a very, very slight margin. If there's any deviation in these water revenues, then this fund's going to go into a deficit, and that's what my concern is.
No, that's not the case. I'm afraid you're misreading this. The surplus and deficit line in each year shows the operations. So, for example, 2012, the surplus and deficit, it's a surplus of $200,000. 2013, a deficit of $90,000, and so on. But the actual fund balance is down below. What we're trying to do is keep a fund balance of about $1 million for reserves. So we're accomplishing that. We're absorbing the small fluctuations in operating deficit and surplus and still maintaining that $1 million. So you have an awful lot of play in case anything goes wrong.
I'm reading the sheet. I was speaking to the fund balance. That's what I referenced, the fund balance. Is the additional $800,000 in this worksheet for this new loan order?
That fund
Is it-
balance
is
is
it in here?
after we pay for that additional 800,000.
The 800,000 is in there. That's in the debt service on new authorization.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy, then Councilor Mendoza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the important things that we have to keep in mind here is that most of this is absolutely needed. It's not like this isn't going to be a problem 2 or 3 years down the road. If you saw the condition of the water main over on Moore Street, I think you would be more inclined to be approving some of these projects because, you know, there can be problems that arise in the next 2 or 3 years that really drive up your costs even higher, you know, so that you are in fact running deficits in those years because you have to now respond to a problem that could have been taken care of earlier. I think where we do have favorable rates right now to borrow the money, where we do have, you know, the favorable costs to actually perform the work at this time, I think it makes sense rather than pushing this down the road and actually paying more for it later, because you're not doing the ratepayers any favors by looking at this through the prism of 1 year. You really have to take a long-term view so that you really aren't overburdening them in the next 4 to 5 to 6 and on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mendoza?
Yes, certainly we need to continue our improvements to our infrastructure. We need to do that. The question became, how much can we do without burdening the ratepayers further? And I guess this is a good compromise where we continue to improve the service, deal with possible catastrophic failure in the future by having some redundancy now, and as we can afford it in the future, we can decide to increase the redundancy by going out further as they wanted for 12,000 feet, a few more miles of pipe instead of what they're going to do right now. But this is a start, and there are improvements that do pay for themselves, the photovoltaics and the meter upgrades, so that we're not losing because of the meter inaccuracies. Now, I did just receive this, but I was just looking at it quickly, and I noticed that they have accounted for increases year over year, so things are increasing in cost, the wages, the health, the dental, Medicare, pensions, and of course, they know once the debt service is approved what that will be going out, so long as we don't add anything more. So I am pleased to see this particular debt service broken out separately so we can see the impact it'll have. And of course, because it's a bond, the principal declining along with the interest. So as with most debt service, it goes down as it goes out. Yet even with all that being accounted for, we still have a stable, as you stated was your goal, around $1 million, 900,000 some now, up to 1.2 million in the future. That's the window of uncertainty, that if for some reason some of these costs did go up higher than expected, you still have that as a buffer. Now, of course, you can't continue that indefinitely because you'll whittle away that surplus until it's gone after a few years. So I think this is the best compromise. We have a building that we may think needs a roof and siding, and we're choosing to just do the roof because that's so important and just paint it. We know that eventually we're going to have to paint it again or do the siding, but we're just putting that off because right now we can, and we are taking a little bit of a risk that in those areas where we don't create redundancies, if there is a failure, it's going to be costly to repair. We're going to have to shut down the system for a while. But we have to take a little chance on that in order to do the most we can without impacting our ratepayers. I also appreciate that on the other side, I know you'd given us information before, that if you look at what it costs to produce the water in Lowell, it's still fairly low compared to these other 12 communities. both as a factor of medium household income and the actual cost. We seem to be one of the lowest, I think, in both factors of the 12 communities listed here, including Boston, Lawrence, Lynn. So a lot of the cities are included here. So clearly, compared to these others, we're getting somewhat of a bargain in our water rates. I don't want to use that as an excuse to say we can raise it further. We just did that, and I think this is the best compromise where we get these improvements and we maintain our rates reasonable for at least 5 years out that we can project right now. What happens after that? Well, that'll be up to future councils as to what improvements they want to make and what obstacles they run into in those future years. So I'm very pleased that we are able to do this without a rate increase, and I'll support it as a way to improve our water service.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support this as well. I think that it's important that we take advantage of the favorable rates. We're going to achieve some energy efficiency, and we can probably get this done at a lower cost under the circumstances in the economy. It's definitely needed work. We've got some redundancy work. I understand they'd like to do more, but we can only afford this much without increasing rates. Stackpole Street is 60 years old. It was an issue that came up when we were talking about the water tower over in Centerville, and the fact that there's been issues there, and that pushes all the water over into this side of the river. I think it's important that we continue to invest in these planned improvements, and that by way of level funding our debt service here. Mr. Manager, as we go forward, I think one of the issues that the council had when this first came in, two issues. One is it was going to require a rate increase, number one. Number two is that it wasn't in our budget under capital improvement. So going forward, and I know this might have been brought to you after the fact, but if we could be more cognizant of it, that these things are maybe coming up or they're necessary so that it doesn't come up after the fact when a budget's already approved. And with the understanding that we are going through these enterprise funds and we do have these discussions and you're supplying a tremendous amount of information, it would be good to have it all together, I think. But I think that it's going to provide much needed improvements, some efficiencies, and we're going to do it without raising the rates. Councilman Donson already went through this, the handout we got tonight. I would like a little more heads up on these to be able to review them, but it's fairly detailed but somewhat simple at the same time. It shows increases across the boards so that that you're providing for the increases in costs as we go out, and we see the debt service decreasing, which we know over time will decrease, and then as debt service falls off, maybe we can go and do some more redundancy work or something else as we again plan it and work it into our budget. But I appreciate Mr. Layeff and his crew coming back with a modified, more affordable version that will give the ratepayers a break, at least for the next 5 years till we maybe have to do something more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Elliott?
I just have one more question, Mayor, to Mr. Moses. So when rates were raised the last time, over 24%, are you saying that if this loan order of $800,000 didn't go through, then there conceivably would be a fund balance of almost $2 million?
Right now, if this loan order didn't go through, the balance today would still be $900,000. But given now what we know from 2011, we would be running a surplus of probably $700,000 or $800,000 a year that we didn't anticipate. One of the reasons that's happening is that the meter replacement, the commercial industrial meter replacement, is already generating much more revenue than we thought it would. We did not know that back in November when we actually sought the rate increase. We didn't know that was going to happen through the rest of 2011. So what's happened is...
How much more revenue was that?
Well, it's several $100,000 a year. So what we're now doing is taking that knowledge now that 2011 has been completed, and I'm including it in the forecast going forward, which makes everything much more affordable.
Just one more question, Mayor. So you're projecting a 1.1, 1.6, I'm just trying to get a handle on this, Mr. Moses. You get 800,000 in here for debt service. If that debt service comes out, doesn't that increase that? I mean, my math says it increased the fund balance by 800,000. But you don't have that expense.
It would. I just said that.
Okay, so conceivably there'd be close to 2 million, which I question why rates were increased so much the last time.
We requested that rate increase in November, and the reason it looks so good now is because we didn't know that the meter replacement was going to be so successful through fiscal 2011.
If Councilor Elliott doesn't mind, I'd like to also add that some of the revenues on the top of the forecast would not be there without the $10 million project. So some of that revenue would be taken off the top as well. So you're reading it correct to an extent, but you just can't look at the bottom without looking at the top.
Well, we wouldn't get the SRECs either, so it's almost a wash, a significant wash. You're not going to spend the money for the photovoltaics because you're not going to get the energy credits. So,
no, point taken, but there's some revenue in the top.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. I just want to ask Dan one more question, please. Dan, on the total estimated cost, I don't have a problem with the water main replacement. The valve and hydrant installation is $3 million. I don't have a problem with that. What I'm having a problem with is the water WTF raw water intake station and PS improvements, including solar panels. What is with the raw water intake station? You're going to rebuild that whole station?
No, we're just going to do some structural improvements.
I can't hear you.
We're going to do some structural improvements to it.
And the solar panel, it's a $7 million bill?
No, we're also doing some water treatment improvement at the water treatment plant also. We're doing the raw water intake station, pump stations, and also including the solar panels.
But what do we spend $42 million on over the last 12 years? I thought we renewed all the pump stations and whatever you needed up there.
In 2001, we rebuilt the plant. I believe it was $11.1 million. The rest of the money has gone into high and low lift pumps. We replaced our pumps, but we also did a significant amount of money in the streets. We also built a new pump station, new water tower on Wedge Street. We've had improvements. We've run the gamut throughout the whole system. So that $7 million is the total. The water treatment facility, the raw water intake station, the pump stations, the new one, Stackpole Street, and the solar panels. That's the $7 million total. So it's four components.
What's the water main replacement? I thought that was Stackpole Street.
No, that's our pump station. That's our pump station. PS, it says pump station improvements. We're going to improve. Are you familiar with the Stackpole Street station?
Yes, I'm very familiar with it, yes.
That's what we're doing over.
Right, that's what, it went down last winter.
We had a break out front, the external
And what's
feed
the
that
cost
goes
to
up.
replace that?
To do it all together, total start to finish, I'd estimate about $600,000, Rob.
600,000.
That's just for the pump station. I would say it'd be over $1 million to do pumping work, new station, rehab the pumps.
Yeah.
Over $1 million. About 1.2
And I know that has to be done. I know that.
Correct. That's in the $7
But the
million.
$7 million, that's just a crow at me. That's, you know.
But that includes all four components, Counselor. The $7 million includes the $1.2 million for the Stackpole Street station.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. What's the wish for the council? We have a motion to move approval by Councilman Mendoza, seconded by Council Broderick. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
No.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Mendoza?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
No.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
7 yeas, 2 nays. The loan order passes. Thank you. We get through a lot of public hearing items this evening. Thank you all. Moving on to the city manager's agenda. In city council vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the city of Lowell to accept a gift from the administrator of the estate of Mayor E. McNamara in the amount of $335.26 for use by the Council on Aging of the city of Lowell, whereas in accordance with the last will and testament of Mary E. McNamara, the Lowell Senior Center is named to receive a bequest of $335.26 for use by the Council on Aging, whereas the City of Lowell desires to accept the gift of said funds for use by its Council on Aging. Now therefore be it voted that the city manager be and is hereby authorized in the name of the City of Lowell to accept a gift from the administrator of the estate of Mary E. McNamara in the amount of $335.26 for use by the Council on Aging pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A. Be it further voted that we, the members of the City Council of the City of Lowell, jointly and severally, do hereby commend and officially extend the gratitude of the City of Lowell for the generosity displayed through this donation of the aforesaid gift to the City of Lowell. Second reading by title. In City Council vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to accept a gift from the administrator of the estate of Mary E. McNamara in the amount of $335.26 for use by the Council of Aging in the City of Lowell. Move approval by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Martin. Any discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Mendoza?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
Thank you. The next item, before I read the vote, I'm going to just note we have 2 representatives from the Lions Club who have been here patiently with us all evening, and I want to thank them for their indulgence and obviously this item that they're bringing forward to us this evening. In City Council vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to accept a gift of 16 dogwood trees to be planted at various parks within the City of Lowell from the Lions Club of Lowell Incorporated. Whereas the Lions Club of Lowell Incorporated desires to donate 16 dogwood trees with a value of approximately $2,500 for planting at various parks in the City of Lowell, and whereas the City of Lowell desires to accept the gift of said dogwood trees to be planted at various parks in the City of Lowell, now therefore be it voted that the city manager be and he is hereby authorized in the name of the City of Lowell to accept a gift of 16 dogwood trees to be planted at various parks in the City of Lowell from the Lions Club of Lowell Incorporated with a value of $2,500 pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A and a half. No objection. Second reading by title. In City Council vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to accept the gift of 16 dogwood trees to be planted at various parks within the City of Lowell from the Lions Club of Lowell Incorporated.
Do they want to speak?
Councilor Mercia.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a gift that'll live on and on. I think that's beautiful, and dogwood trees are very beautiful. I have one in front of my house, too, so thank you very much. That's wonderful.
Thank you, Len. Thank you. Motion to suspend the rules to allow representatives to
So
speak.
move.
So moved by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilman Mendoza. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Again, thank you and welcome.
All right. I'm Marcel Plouffe from the president of Lowell Lions Club. And we had an unusual challenge from Lions Club International President Tam. He was challenging all the lions in the world to give back to the community by planting 1 million trees in 203 countries. And the Lowell Lions Board of Directors approved to meet that challenge. So we're looking for that permission from the City of Lowell to plant these trees. And at the same time, it will help our environment and make the city a little bit more beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Roll call on the vote.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Mendoza?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next item, in City Council vote, authorizing the city manager to apply for, accept, and expend a grant in the amount of $50,000 through the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, Recreational Trails Grant Program for the Concord River Greenway Phase 3A construction in the city of Lowell. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Dakota. All those in favor of waiving the full reading signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager to apply for, accept, and expend a grant in the amount of $50,000 through the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, Recreational Trails Grant Program for the Concord River Greenway Phase 3A construction in the city of Lowell. What's the wish of the council? Move approval by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Mendoza?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next item, in City Council vote, authorizing the city manager in the name of the City of Lowell to accept a deed to Rita Street Extension in the City of Lowell from Loon Hill Development Incorporated. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Mendoza, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor of waiving the full reading signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Second reading by title in the City Council vote, authorizing the city manager in the name of the City of Lowell to accept a deed to Rita Street Extension in the City of Lowell from Loon Hill Development Incorporated. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Any discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Mendoza?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next item, we have a correspondence from the city manager pursuant to the authority vested in me as city manager under Chapter 382 of the Acts of 1991 and the Code of the City of Lowell, Article 7, Section 9-23. I am appointing the following person to the Hunger Homeless Commission: Dorothy Duval, Merrimack Valley Catholic Charities at 70 Lawrence Street, appointed to the unexpired term vacated by Scott Stoles, who is no longer employed by Merrimack Valley Catholic Charities, which term will expire January 4th, 2012, or until such time thereafter a successor is appointed and qualified. Under the above referenced ordinance, confirmation by the City Council is not required. Motion to accept the communication placed on file by Councilor Mendoza, seconded by Councilor Murphy. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Next item under subcommittee reports, it looks like we have a report of the Traffic Neighborhood Subcommittee.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The Neighborhood Traffic Subcommittee convened a meeting last Thursday at, I believe, 5 o'clock.
Thanks.
And in attendance was Councilor Rita Mercier and Councilor Kevin Broderick. Also in attendance was Manager Lynch, Tom Moses, Adam Backey, Kendra Amaral, Gunther Wellenstein, Henry Marchand, and I believe the traffic engineer too, Eric Eby. And the focus was on two issues. One was on the illegal dumping in the city, and the other one was on the residential parking signs. And the question was posed to Manager Lynch if we could have a one-day pickup of debris and so forth, and Manager Lynch indicated that if we had that, it would cost approximately $350,000 by the time the city picked it up and disposed of those items. I did ask a question, what would be the salary of an inspector to go out through the city to make sure we didn't have illegal dumping? And the manager indicated it'd be a salary of around $40,000. A motion was made by Councilor Mercier, seconded by Councilor Broderick, to increase the fines for illegal dumping from $25, Mr. Mayor, $25. Someone dumps a mattress on a sidewalk, it's gonna cost them $20 to get rid of it. So even if they're caught, It's $25. So the subcommittee unanimously supported the motion to increase the fine to $100. And for the second offense, it would be $200. Also, we brought up the issue about looking into legislation tying the fines to the renewal of one's license, vehicle's license. And I think if we forward that, Mr. Manager, to a home rule petition, whatever, I think that is going to carry an awful lot of weight. On the other issue, the residential parking sites, Mrs. Miller from Beacon Street in Centerville brought forward, she spoke before the council, Councilor Elliott filed a motion that she wants to know the legality of these parking signs and are they constitutional. And Councilman Donce was at the meeting too. And we brought up the issue about back Central Street, the residential parking signs and so forth. So we referred this to the law department, and I talked to Chris O'Connor about it, and we're going to have another meeting and check into the legality of these residential parking signs. And the problem here, Mr. Mayor, is you have some residents, they have a driveway for 2 cars, and they have residential parking signs all around their house. And that's just totally unwarranted. So we're going to have to take a long, hard look at this. And before we issue any more of these signs, I think that everyone has to apply, but I think it has to be investigated as well. Is there a need for those signs? Back Central Street, Lower Centerville, Lower Belvedere, there is a need for those signs because parking is limited. But that's the report, and we didn't adjourn, we recessed. We're going to have another follow-up meeting. And Mr. Manager, there's 2 coaches on Porter Street, that's off High Street, and there's also debris, litter, and items on Powell and Nottingham Street. And on Broadway Street, on my way down here tonight, I don't know if someone's having a yard sale, but it's kind of odd to having a yard sale on a Tuesday evening. The entire sidewalk is filled with everything you can imagine. So check that out for me, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, and I think we know who our new inspector can be if we do hire one. But just for clarification, I think we had the discussion about what it would cost to do these, whether it was 3 times a year, 4 times a year pickups, free pickups for residents. And I think the cost was approximately estimated by Mr. Wellenstein at $350,000 per pickup. That was based upon, for 4 times a year. So that was based upon trucks being deployed 4 times a year in the tonnage. But if we did it once a year, we would save on the trucks, although they'd have to put out more trucks for that one time. But the tonnage would be much more than the 1 out of 4. So the 350 would likely be much far greater than that. I think we had talked about. I know there wasn't really an estimate, but a one-time pickup would be greatly excessive of $350,000. But it was a good meeting, and I think that there was also discussion of having some type of maybe a drop-off center, which would, I think there was talk of maybe trying to coordinate a regional drop-off center, which may reduce the cost for residents, because if you deliver it, you don't have the trucks going out. So the Allied Waste trucks going out. So that was always a good meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Just to comment to that, there is, as I think I reported at that meeting, we have been having discussions with the area communities on a regional facility. In addition to that, we're exploring with Gunther Wellenstein and our DPD a temporary and then a permanent drop-off site here in the city that we can look at as well. So we're looking at several different options.
Council Mercier, then I'll recognize Council Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did get a report and an update on the illegal dumping. We did learn that the manager's staff, some of the DPW people and the departmental services, they had a meeting with Allied Waste. They sat down and came up with some suggestions, which I personally thought were pretty good. We have a fee schedule, and it varies. $10 for this, 20 for that, 15 for this. They figured it would be much more simplified if we just put a flat rate across and said $15 for each thing. That way there, you're not wondering, is it 10, is it 20? That was a good idea. They talked about providing stickers. This would be a visual cue that would alert people going by, such as Councilor Caulfield, that the couch had a sticker and was paid. So that, in a point, was a good thing. Establish a bulky drop-off place that Councilor Broderick talked about. That was a good idea, too. Sometimes people don't want to wait to the Friday. Sometimes people put something out on a Friday thinking, well, today's the day, let them come and get it, and I'll call and send my number over the phone for my credit card. But that doesn't work that way. You have to do it in advance for Friday. So some people would probably welcome a drop-off center where you could say, well, it's Wednesday, I just want to bring this TV down and, you know, pay the price right there. So that's a good thing. And Tom Moses did say something interesting as well about landlords take a security deposit, and if the tenant leaves something on the street, some things on the street, that property owner would be cited. But, I mean, the landlord owner would be cited, and so he could take a portion of that security deposit and use it for paying those fines. So there's some good suggestions, and it was a good meeting, and we did recess because it's quite lengthy and there's more to do, but it's a start, and it's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to pick up, Councilor Mercier brought it forward, this beginning a sticker issue where people would prepay, and the couches on Porter Street don't have a sticker on it, believe me. But if someone who prepaid would receive a sticker, Allied Waste would know, the neighbors would know, that item is going to be picked up. No sticker, it's out there illegally. So we just have to start cracking down, because, I believe, Mr. Manager, even if we had one day where everyone could get rid of all their excess items, it wouldn't stop the problem. It would not stop.
The wish of the subcommittee is to refer the recommendation to increase the fines from $25 to $100 and
Yes.
$200 to the law department to be drawn up in proper form?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we,
Okay,
and we also like to come in with a home rule petition to lobby the legislature on those fines, attaching it to one's renewal of their license.
Okay, okay. That's a recommendation of the subcommittee made by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Counselor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion by Councilor Dakota, seconded by Councilor Murphy to accept the report of the Neighborhood Traffic Subcommittee as a report of progress. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Any other subcommittee reports? Hearing none. Moving on, under general petitions, we have a miscellaneous petition from Enid DeCastro requesting a handicap parking sign at 54 to 56 Nelson Avenue. Referred to the traffic engineer by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Dakota. All those in favor of referring this petition to the traffic engineer indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. We have a utility petition, pole location, National Grid location on Hildreth Street. Refer to a public hearing on October 4th. Motion by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Mendonça to refer the request of National Grid for a pole location on Hildreth Street to a public hearing on October 4th. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. That concludes the utility petitions. Moving on to the motions. We have 12 motions before us this evening. First one by Councilor Mercier. Thank you. Motion, request the City Council establish an ad hoc clerk oversight subcommittee and the mayor appoint the members for the purpose of addressing the shortfalls and existing issues in the terms of the day-to-day operations of the clerk's office, i.e. office structure, accountability, record-keeping, open meeting, and state ethics law. Seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Mercia.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think that in essence speaks for itself, to not belabor the issue. We had it there before. I think it should be reestablished. It's not a personnel issue. It's an overall day-to-day operations, and I just want to revisit it, as well as if we could refer Brian Leahy's report to that established subcommittee at the same time. Thank you.
Motion by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Mendonça to also refer the final report, which was in our packets, to the ad hoc clerk oversight subcommittee
And
as
if
well.
I must say, Mr. Mayor, this was quite brilliant. I must say that this was really a lot of work and detailed and oversight was put into it, and I really want to say thank you publicly to Brian for that. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mendonça, then Councilor Broderick.
Just wondering if we could suspend the rules to bring Councilor Murphy's similar motion up at this time. It's really almost the same.
Okay, that does make sense. A motion to suspend the rules by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Dakota, to bring up Councilor Murphy's motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Just read it here. Quite similar in nature. Motion, request the City Council develop policy recommendations for oversight of clerk's office and refer final report to the Personnel Subcommittee for discussion. In this case, it was to the ad hoc subcommittee, but second by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Murphy on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really have no problem where it goes, as long as it goes somewhere for discussion. There was something mentioned at our special meeting by the council for the assistant clerk, who offered to really submit written recommendations as well to be taken up at the same time for her input, and I think that would be valuable in the discussion. But I do think that we do need to have that discussion in what exactly oversight of the office would look like. In the prior report, it suggested or seemed to suggest, I think, that we had to be physically in the office to be able to conduct oversight. But in really thinking it through, it shouldn't be any different from how we conduct oversight from the city for the city manager. Really, we're not in his office all the time or in any of the other departments' offices, or at least I'm not. But in doing it really the same way, by requesting information, by asking questions, by following up on items, seeking reports and that sort of thing, and I think that's how we ought to be conducting it, so that we understand from, for example, the responses that we get and the follow-up that we do, what work is being done and that it is being done in the way that it ought to be. And so I think, but what we really have many steps, I think, to do or to take before we get to that point, and certainly that would be the discussion I expect to take place at the ad hoc committee.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you. I think these are both good motions. Support them both. I think that we maybe make a determination. Obviously, we need to set up a schedule on what we're going to do in terms of review and requests, whether it's quarterly. But I think whatever we call this subcommittee, I know we got rid of the clerk auditor oversight subcommittee or combined it. So if we're going to create a new subcommittee or put that back in place, I think ad hoc to me sounds temporary. I think we ought to make sure this is permanent. Obviously, this is going to be the oversight, and I think that we want to just consider that, that's all. But I think it's a good motion, and obviously, we need to get this in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on both motions? All those in favor of both motions indicate by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Next motion by Council Mercier. Motion, City Council requests the city manager have the developmental services, inspectional services streamline the permitting process that relates to the treasurer's office. Seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Council Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that if you would have gone to the treasurer's office, you would see that they're relatively busy all day long. So that if we can streamline the zoning or whatever the permitting process is, I think that would help not only the people that are coming into the city wanting to develop property, but it would help the treasurer's office as well. I know this is happening because the gentleman that spoke on that zoning issue, Mr. Jenkins, happened to tell me this, and I investigated a little bit further and found that it actually is true. If you're going to build, let's take, for example, a single-family home. First, you must go to the treasurer's office to make sure and prove that all your taxes are paid. Absolutely a great thing. I don't want to give one permit to anybody in the city that is owing this city taxes, whether it be on your water bill or whatever. That is absolutely mandatory, and I think it's warranted. But to go back 7 times, and I'm going to take you through that, and I know that this is true. I pulled a permit out about a month ago because my son was doing a roof on my garage, and I came here to pull a permit, and before I could even do any more transaction, I had to go downstairs to the treasurer's office. I didn't know why I went down there, but they stamped something. I guess they looked up that I had paid my taxes and water bill, which is a good thing, and I went upstairs and got my permit. Of course, I paid the proper price. So that if you want to build a single-family home, you have to go down there. Next step is a street opening permit. So now, since you need the street opening permit, you got to revisit the treasurer's office and sign off that your taxes are paid. So that's the second time you went down there. Now you need a full permit for a foundation. So now you've revisited again, and then you have to have that stamped, and you got to go upstairs again. I should think that they know that this is all related to some way or another. Now an excavator is coming along to dig a hole out. He has to go down to the treasurer's office and make sure that that person's property is paid. Then the plumber, then the electrician, then the heating HVAC. Before it's over, there's 7 times you visited those poor people in the treasurer's office that must be pulling their hair out of their head. I don't see the point of it. Once would be enough. 2 would probably be too much, but Mr. Manager, we got to do something to alleviate. We don't want to punish people.
Mr. Manager?
Counselor, I couldn't agree more, and I think there's a motion. I won't jump too far ahead here, but there is a motion here, and the progress that's been made with the reorganization of inspectional services, and you'll see with the report that's being generated that quite a bit of progress has been done in sort of improving our processes. But this is an area that we have had some discussions on of how we can streamline that more for the sake of the resident in particular, but also the staff, so that they can allocate their time more effectively. So it is a work in progress that we're anxious to get going on and tie that in with it. It'll be a tie-in with the Munis system, and there's a number of aspects to that, but I couldn't agree more.
Thank you. That's the motion.
Anyone else on the motion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Next motion by Councilor Mercier. Motion, City Council requests the city manager establish a drop-off area where residents can bring large branches and trees after storms such as those Christmas tree areas. Seconded by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Mercier.
And that speaks for itself as well. We have all attended a forum, and these are the things that people were concerned about.
Thank you.
I'll refer that to the manager, and that's something to look into. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Next motion by Councilor Mercier. Motion, City Council requests the city manager send the traffic engineer to Fowler Road to inspect sunken areas of the street caused by utility tie-ins and see if there is any portion of a performance bond still existing. Seconded by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Same forum, different person. I took a ride down there. It's deplorable. And I don't blame the city, and I know there's not much we can do about utilities, but the utilities have to abide by the state code, which says that they have to put your street back to, if not better, but to the same, if not better condition that they found it in. And over the years, the utilities have tied in time and time again on this particular street, and you can see where it has sunken in over the years. And I know that someone might want to throw the book across the room, but we did have a list of all the streets and their conditions, and I know that we're following a certain amount of streets, and this isn't probably on the list, but if we could look down the road and see that it is in deplorable condition. I actually went there, and I kind of get seasick. You know, we were just, it was unbelievable, the ruts, but you could see the different squares, the tie-ins, and how it sank in front of each place. It was awful. And I'm sure that it was over years and over time, so they probably don't have a performance bond in place right now. I'm probably sure of it, but...
Manager Lynch?
Council, this is an all too common problem in many communities, and really what it requires is, you're probably right, it probably over time it has sunk down, and the performance bond is long gone. I think they generally last about 5 years. But what it cries out for is, and I know that Lisa DeMayo has done as city engineer, is put in place some standards that have to be followed by utility companies when they dig up a road. And I know that she made a number of improvements along those lines to improve the compaction, some different techniques to improve that. And then ultimately it requires that we actually go out and do the inspections, that we have staff people that are out there actually looking in the hole to make sure it's being done the right way. But we'll check on this and see what can be done on that, and see if what we can do to solve that problem. But ultimately, for new projects moving forward, I think we're better covered than we've been in the past, but also it does require that we have that inspector out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Murphy?
Thank you. Just to add to that, I know from some of the projects that have been done, for example, for the water main replacement, you know, people up on Moore Street actually were kind of waiting for the street to be repaved, but that was a practice where you have to wait a certain period of time so that the ground can actually settle, and you don't have that problem that arises where you have sinkholes basically because of not waiting that time. So I know that a number of the newer projects are actually addressing that issue.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor of them? Oh, Councilman Donza, I'm sorry.
This is not directly related, so I'm stretching it a little bit. But somebody brought to my attention that streets recently paved as part of the manager's initiative in Centerville, in the West 3rd area. Looks like they're being marked up to be opened for some reason. And so if somebody could just look into it, I thought we weren't supposed to open up newly paved streets for several years.
There is a period of time in which those are supposed to stay without any type of cut, but we'll check on that on West 3rd.
It may be, National Grid's gas division.
Right. This is, again, a common problem that we run into with National Grid. We try to notify them ahead of time of where we're doing work, so that if they have to replace any mains, they can coordinate. We're doing it out on Parker right now, and they've coordinated, with some other issues, but they're coordinated with us. But another aspect of that is they go out and they market gas service in areas after we've paved, and then we run into problems with people sometimes going so far as to getting they'll do the work in the summer, get the new gas furnaces or hot water heater or whatever in, and then they they don't have gas coming into the house, and then they come to us and ask us to connect up, and obviously that's a problem.
If the maker of the motion doesn't matter, if you could attach an update on that area, I'd appreciate it.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, are you aware of any policy, it might even be regulated at the state level? I know a while back we had a similar discussion many years ago before you were here, requiring contractors to use a product called controlled density fill.
Flowable concrete.
Right. Can we require it? Do contractors use it, particularly on these street openings? I know it's more expensive, but it is a solution to address these these sinkholes, if you will, in the future.
I'll look and see where we are with that. There are a couple of issues with that. I know that's something that communities have tried to push forward, and I think, and Lisa DeMayo is certainly well aware of that, and I think she's tried to do some of that. There was some pushback by some of the utilities at the state level with some of these standards. There are whole new trench regulations that came out. Honestly, I'm not sure where that stands,
that's
but
fine.
we'll check on that, and I think that's a good add-in to the response to Councilor Mercier as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Next motion by Councilor Mercier. Motion, the City Council requests the City Manager have the Parks Department and the police address issues at Monsignor Keenan Park at Hampshire Street and West 6th Street, graffiti, tree limbs on power lines, kids vandalizing the brick wall, and kids skipping school.
Second.
Second by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Mercier.
You said it all.
Okay.
Motion speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, it's a vote. Next motion by Councilor Murphy. Motion, City Council requests the City Manager report on rental permitting requirements for landlords. Seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion grew out of a previous one on fair housing and our compliance with that, so that landlords fully understand what their responsibilities are under the law. And this is really just to get an idea of what it is we're requiring right now and whether or not we can make some adjustments so that they not only understand that law, but also a number of the others. Something was mentioned earlier tonight about prepaying for basically tenants' trash, that type of thing, so that people fully understand all the codes that they should be in compliance with.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Anyone else on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Next motion by Councilor Murphy. Motion, City Council requests the City Manager report on the potential of student smart cards to access public transit, schools, recreational, and library resources. Second by Councilor Dakota. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. This was a pilot project that Boston has been working on over the last year. And it's to really drive up in a number of areas, make it easier for students to be able to access those resources. But it also provides an interesting set of data, I think, for the school department to be able to look at some of the issues that might be identified by establishing some correlations between the use of different resources. Obviously, it would be some time away before any kind of implementation of this, and I know that the manager has had some conversations with the LRTA and actually coming up with a Charlie card type system for this area, so that while you're in those discussions, that this might be also brought to the table, so that planning could be done for future years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Anyone else on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Next motion by Councilor Murphy. Motion, City Council requests the City Manager provide a one-year report on reorganization of inspectional services into the Development Services Department. That was a tough one. Second by Councilor Broderick. It's late. Councilor Murphy.
Maybe you ought to tweak the name and call it progress. No organization or department is perfect, certainly, and there's always room for improvement. But I think the department really has been working very, very hard over the last year. And we have the benefit of a number of different reports that come to us throughout the year on issues that they've been addressing really proactively. I had raised a motion, I think, back in May at some point about permitting for homeowners, and the department had already been working just in the last few weeks prior to that on trying to really reduce the number of pages that are passed out to homeowners so that it's much easier for people to make improvements to their homes. Similarly, we had, a report recently about illegal apartments, for example, in what they're doing to proactively crack down on that. We've had all kinds of different changes implemented over the last year, creating districts to promote better cooperation with the police and fire departments so that you have better code enforcement that I think really hasn't been picked up by the local newspaper. And so I think that really to get a fuller picture of what it is that has been achieved over the last year, to fully understand what the weaknesses are as well as the strengths, to be able to build upon those in the next year and two, I think would be important and helpful for everybody to understand where we are and how we might be able to really improve upon that.
Mr. Manager?
Counselor, I appreciate you bringing this motion forward. We've been working on a report, and that you're bringing this motion forward allows us to, certainly allows us to sort of jump the gun on the process we had in mind to get this report to the council. I appreciate the comments. I do think there's been a tremendous amount of work done by the staff over there, by the restructuring that really moves towards the goal that this city council and prior city councils, as long as I've been here, have talked about in terms of improving code enforcement, improving accountability, and improving the quality of service. And I do think the public will be very pleased to hear the work that's been done and the staffing that we have in place in that department. I know that the neighborhood organizations are very pleased with the response that they're getting to anything that they bring forward, and we look forward to making this report to the council.
Thank you. Anything, Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. I don't disagree that a lot of work has been done, Mr. Manager, and we have received reports. But what is of concern is that, and maybe there's some logical answer for it, that individuals are hired that don't have their certification. I understand that they're given an opportunity to get that, but that was one of the concerns at the outset, that we had a department with individuals that didn't or were not able to attain those certifications. So do you have, can you explain or give us an update? Because a lot of the good work that and restructuring this and putting procedures in place, I think is affected somewhat by the integrity of the fact that that individuals are hired that do not have their appropriate certifications.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And again, I think that, and I wasn't going to go down this road, but I think that the reports that have been covered in the local newspaper have been inaccurate, misleading, and frankly, damaging to the city of Lowell. And I'm happy to sit here tonight as the city manager who, not with great joy, but I actually took personnel action against people who did not receive their certifications in an appropriate amount of time, that had had years without receiving their certifications, and we cleared that up. The state does have a procedure, and this has been explained to the on a number of fronts, including the local newspaper. The state does have a procedure. They have a requirement that people that serve in the position of inspectors be certified. However, generally speaking, people do not become certified until they become a local inspector. They have to become qualified to become a local inspector. The state actually has a procedure that spells out how that takes place, and the state has to approve people to serve in the role of inspector or commissioner. So every single employee down there who have very good resumes, exemplary resumes, a tremendous amount of experience in construction, had to go through a process where all of that was submitted to the state. The state approved all those people and said, okay, you're qualified. Now we just require that you go through the necessary process of receiving your certifications. They give a certain amount of time for that to happen, and that is taking place. The only way you can get certified building inspectors to actually be hired is if you can somehow woo them from another community. That's a very, very difficult process. You know, it's very difficult to get building inspectors to start with because many of them are contractors that are out making their living, in many cases, substantially more income than what communities pay. It's for other reasons that people go into that line of work. And
Did we have any apply from other
when we
communities?
had the last time we went out for an inspector, we did have we had 20 resumes. We had one certified building inspector. And truthfully, we were all set to hire that person. But we did our due diligence and we contacted their employer. We contacted several of their employers and came back with very, very negative job references. So we made the decision that we would drop down to the next candidate that was not certified, was able to be qualified by the state, and is now serving with the city, is being given a certain amount of time to become certified, and if he does not receive the certification in the appropriate amount of time, once again, we will have them, we will tell them that they cannot serve as an inspector. But I think that the characterization that's been made that somehow these people are not qualified is totally off base. All it takes is a simple call to the state to have the process explained. All it takes is looking at what other communities do. And I've had the opportunity, as you know, I'm I'm on very good relationships with managers across the Commonwealth. And this one was one that caught me a little bit off guard that these things were being said. So I made the point of contacting other managers and saying, have you ever run across this? And they said, well, of course, you know, you're not going to have people become certified until they come in the door. Or you're going to have to pay substantially more money to woo people away from other communities. And there's a finite number of people that serve as inspectors across the Commonwealth. And they're not anxious to move. They generally tend to be very happy in the communities that they're serving. And they're you know, trying to get them to move to the city of Lowell or any community is very difficult. And so, again, the people that we have there are very qualified. They're probably the most qualified inspectors that you could find because of their construction experience, substantial construction experience, and very big project construction experience. They are all on their way to getting the necessary certifications, you know, and we're going to give them an opportunity to do that. You know, if they don't, then we'll have to take other actions. But again, I think this administration has a strong track record of requiring that people live up to the requirements that the law sets forth. And at the same time, we also have a very strong record of hiring very qualified people for these positions. But Councilor, I appreciate the opportunity to address that head on. I said all of that in a letter to the paper, but that letter has not yet run.
Anything else on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Next motion by Councilor Elliott. Motion, City Council requests the city auditor to direct independent audit firm to audit all departments that accept cash. Second by Councilor Mercier. Councilor Elliott.
I think the motion speaks for itself,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor. I don't have much else to say. I think it's important and interesting. In this management letter, apparently it was cited last year in one of the findings that internal auditing is an independent appraisal activity. I won't read the whole thing, but considering the size and complexity of the city of Lowell warrants consideration of an internal audit function. So I think that says it all, and apparently this was a prior year comment, so
Okay,
I
thank you.
just got this tonight.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Next motion by Councilor Elliott. Motion, request city manager update city council on solar panels at landfill. Seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Elliott.
One of my favorite subjects. I know, Mr. Manager, you were having discussions a while ago, and you're going to report back on any progress, so I wanted to see where we're at. You know, I see this all the time where I work. I see developments. In fact, one of the largest solar feels is being developed. Of course, it's in Florida, the Sunshine State, but I do see it quite frequently, so, and of course I go by there quite often, so I wanted to know if there's any progress. And I've actually been contacted by individuals, you know, where is the city doing that? And of course it has to be bid, so.
Mr. Manager?
Actually, a couple of points on it. I will get a report to the council on the status of this. It's tied up with some issues regarding the methane extraction that we're trying to work through. I actually had a meeting earlier today with a company that is interested in doing some other things up at the landfill, but included within that is some discussions of some solar installations. And again, it's tied up with some of those issues. And as you know, last week I was at the ICMA conference in Milwaukee, and there was some sessions on this very issue, but I also spent some time talking about it with the manager of Canton, which recently did an installation down there. They're in the process of doing it, and we exchanged a number of bits of information on that hopefully will provide some benefits to us in terms of our discussions on the methane. So we're anxious to move forward on this. As you can see by the fact that we're putting solar panels everywhere else in the city.
Right.
That's a
there's
great
no
one.
cost. I mean, as I understand it, it's these companies come in, there's no, and not even little to no capital investment because they're willing to do it, because then they can trade off, or they can receive these credits. So, and then they trade them off to the power companies. So that's why I think we're eager to jump on it. But is there a problem with the methane at the landfill?
The way the
problem with the company?
I want to be careful how I put this, but it involves the methane company and the agreements that we have with them, and trying to work through some of the finer details of that.
So is there
it might be better to talk about in executive session.
Is there a notice of noncompliance at that landfill?
No.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. The last motion of the evening by Councilor Elliott. Motion, City Council requests City Manager work with management to address safety issues at shelter. Seconded by Councilor Caulfield.
I know it's a recurring issue, Mr. Manager. No, not a recurring issue. We've discussed this before, and I know it's a non-profit organization. But when we all, I'm sure you and your staff and everybody here, when we see what takes place at the shelter, I know there's no silver bullet. I know there's no easy answer at that shelter, but there's been a homicide there. There's recently been a rape by a level 3 sex offender. I'm not sure what can be done, but I think we're looking to you to work with people at the shelter, the board of directors, to do something. I know that's, I think that's a tall order to carry out, but we sit back and I see this and say, what can we do? What is being done? I know it's, it's a transient population in and out, but I figured if I didn't do anything, then I, hold myself responsible for it. So I don't know if you've had any meetings or contact or communication with people at the transitional center, or, I don't want to set up another subcommittee or ad hoc subcommittee. I'm not sure that would solve the problem, but I don't know. Any thoughts, Mr. Manager, on this?
Well, again, I'll be happy to get a report to the council on that, but suffice to say that we have had discussions regarding the management and our concerns. They brought in a new management team. I think they've made some tremendous strides and improvements there. It is a tough population. We do have an alleged crime that took place there a couple weeks ago, and I have a meeting coming up in the next couple of days, at which time the management of the Transition Living Center will be there, and that will be one of the topics.
Has there been any thought of relocating? Is it the best location downtown, right in the downtown? Are there too many distractions? Is that something that we look at? And I don't know where there was a better location.
It's a private entity. We can't relocate them. And I think people need to know that. And I'm glad you raised that it isn't a city-owned facility. It's a private, and they own the facility. They own the property, and they're looking to. And I think we have to look at we do have to look at what makes sense in terms of serving the population. And I say that by meaning that it would be great if we didn't have a homeless population to worry about, but we do in the city, and that population tends to congregate in the downtown area. And you want it somewhere, you want this type of center somewhere that it can serve that population. Otherwise, the population's still here,
Right.
but they're here all the time.
Right, I agree. I know we have, and we should be servicing that segment of the public, this segment, and we're all compassionate.
Well, it goes
But
beyond.
we want to coexist, and I do see it successful in some communities, and at this point, it doesn't,
Right.
you know, we've got to make some improvements, because that doesn't seem to be the case.
And my comments go beyond the compassion part to the fact that if the population is going to be here, you want the facility here. Otherwise, you would just have more homeless people on the street as opposed to in a shelter. And they do coexist. I had an opportunity a couple years ago with Chief LaValle to go down and look at a facility down right next to the Ritz in Boston with Commissioner Davis. And it works very well cooperatively. There are issues there, though, and hopefully some discussions will pay off for us on that. But I'll get a report to the council on that.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield, on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This city is very compassionate and has shown that many, many, many times. And in the middle 80s, a group of people got together to get people who were homeless out of the cold in the months of December, January, February, March, and they accomplished that. Now we have a facility that's open 12 months out of the year, and it's sad to say, Mr. Mayor, many of those people who are at that shelter don't even come from Lowell. And I know this has been brought up in the past, and that neighborhood, if this city wants to see that neighborhood flourish with the new courthouse, Hamilton Canal, and many great expectations in that neighborhood, the shelter is like an anchor around the city's lake. If you stand at the corner of South Street and Appleton Street or Middlesex Street, just stand there for a couple of hours and watch the activities. It was intended to get people out of the cold. And I wouldn't want to see anyone suffer from the cold. But there's people down there at months of June, July, August, September, getting 3 square meals a day, and you say to yourself, there's something wrong here. And I know by me saying this, it's not going to fit well with some people, but I had to say it. And I want to help people in the worst way, but sometimes it's how far do you go? And that shelter, it serves its purpose in those very, very cold months, like the Pine Street shelter in Boston and the other shelters in Springfield and Holyoke, whatever. But Council Elliott brought the motion in, and the issue has to be addressed. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you. I think it's a good motion, and I think it's something that we need to revisit periodically because things come up. And but people need to eat 12 months out of the year, and people do need shelter 12 months out of the year. They may not freeze, but they can heat exhaustion, stroke, there's rain, there's all kinds of problems with the weather. So I think I understand what Councilor Caulfield is getting at, that this has grown into something different, but it is necessary. We are a city, and this is part of compassion, but it's also being, part of planning as well. And it's a matter of coexisting. They have these in Boston everywhere, next to the Ritz, in other cities, so they can coexist. And I think, we need to have some meetings and potentially come up with maybe rework the plan. This has been addressed, and it was improved for a while, and it's going to be, a struggle like it is everywhere else. But, people do need to eat 12 months out of the year.
Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to weigh in a little bit on this. And we should be so lucky that when we leave here, we don't have to go there. We're very lucky. Some years ago, the state closed down many facilities. It isn't just homeless because they don't have a job. It's homeless because there's mental illness. I know we have compassion, but we do have to eat. These people have to eat as well. It's a building, and let us not forget it. It was there long before Hamilton Canal was. It was there long before anybody else was there. That was there way back when. Maybe it wasn't the right place at that time, but it was there, and there's not much we can do about that. It's privately owned. They're providing a service for the most vulnerable people, and let me tell you, they eat very darn good. With the cook that's there, she's second to none in her arrangements of the food. I mean, I've served it. They do very good. And I have compassion, and I know that we don't want to see people getting hurt there, killed there. And I'm not trying to say it's a fact of life, but these are people that are mentally ill, that have their families abandon them. We could say, go down by the river and live there, but this place is offering a service and trying to help people out who otherwise would be dead on the street. And so I gotta take that into consideration, that they were there long before all those other places were around it.
Thank you. Anyone else on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. I believe what we need now before we go into executive session, I know we already voted to go into executive session at the end of the regular meeting and adjourn from executive session, but I believe we need a motion to waive the 10 o'clock rule because we're going to continue deliberations in executive session. So motion by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Martin, that the City Council waive the 10 o'clock rule, which does require a roll call.
Counselor Elliott? Counselor Martin?
No.
Counselor Mendonça?
Yes.
Counselor Mercia?
Oh, I don't think Kevin would like it, but I'm going to say yes. Yes, we're going to.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
8 yeas, 1 nay. So we are now moving down to the mayor's reception room, and we'll be beginning our executive session. Thank you all.